link. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream on the Bow Wow Bill page. I'm here with Cameron Ford, Ford K9. How are you, Cameron?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing awesome. Doing awesome. Did you see the message earlier that I sent you? I've been wanting you on for years, man. So I'm so excited to speak with you, to get to know you. And I just appreciate you being here.
No, I'm glad to do it. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So some house cleaning or house, I guess some things that I do at the beginning here. You guys, if you like what I do, I think you went on a different camera. There you go.
Yeah, no, I can switch cameras in the studio. So
it's so fancy, dude. I just have this.
Yeah, that one was, the camera's off a little bit, so I'd have to get up and go move it. So I'm leaving it alone.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to pick your brain.
Yeah.
So you guys, if you like what I do, please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's some content and some live streams that I've done on there. I'll put the link to my Patreon in the comments down below. And I was just telling Cameron, so I've been working the last few months on building an app. And the app is called Train with Love. And it's been launched to the Apple App Store. You can go to trainwithlove.com. And there is a trainer portal in there. So I wanted to make an app that allows trainers to, it allows them to not spend so much time regurgitating or repeating the same things that we say to every single client. And so that's one function of the app. You can assign homework. You can assign lesson plans. You can see your own clients' progress reports on there as well. It's brand new, and so I'm ironing out all the wrinkles and stuff, but it's something that I feel I just kind of thought up, and I feel like this could benefit me, and it already has with some of my clients that use it. And so I've also made an aspect that is for the general public, and then I also have made one for the trainers as well. So check that out, Train with Love. Let me see, I have a banner here somewhere. Right. Show, there it is, trainwithlove.com. And let me know what you guys think. And thank you for checking it out. So, oh yeah, let me share this on my personal page as well. So while I'm sharing this, do you guys, or Cameron, do you want to do a quick introduction on who you are, where you're located, what you're all about?
Yeah, so Cameron Ford. I've had Ford K9 since 2018 when I created it, and then in kind of 2020 got really busy with it. Before all that, I've just had a diverse background in my life. At first, it was a pain in my butt, the fact that I had to always explain why I switched from, I went from the military, then I did law enforcement, worked for a couple agencies in Florida, then later on in Texas. Then after that, got into the contracting world and was part of a couple different companies over the years that were getting teams trained up and sent to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then that culminated with the opportunity that later on I became a contract instructor for a company called Cobra K9 for the Navy SEAL program. And I got, the location I had was Coronado, California. And being out there, to kind of give, this is not any kind of secret stuff, but the way the SEAL teams are kind of split up is you have your group 1, which is your West Coast SEAL teams, which is teams 1, 3, 5, and 7. Then you have group 2, which is the East Coast, and that's 2, 4, 8, and 10. And then you have development group, which is what people refer to as SEAL Team 6. So I was group 1 down in Coronado, worked with those teams. I got a little bit of time 1 year to go spend some time with the guys over at SEAL Team 6, learn some things that they do and why they do it. So that, in that time frame of working with those guys, you're working with those that are the best at what they do and the best at their business and kind of how they operate. No program's perfect, but they have a entire process in why they do things. And that then forced me to kind of be much better. I was confident kind of coming into that world, thinking at that point I'd been in the business about 20 plus years. A lot of my background was law enforcement. When I first started my canine career, it was as a military working dog handler in the Air Force, and I got lucky, stationed in Germany, and that gave me different opportunities way back when. So coming around, kind of, I won't call it full circle, but back into a military type of life as a contractor, with those guys also was what brought me into that science world. And because working with those individuals and the expectations that they had when it came to what should the dog be able to do, how do we train this, what creates the highest or higher reliability aspects, there was just some questions that I didn't know. So then that led me into the science world. And then within the science world, um, I kind of got deep in the weeds within the detection kind of thing, and a few other things like canine cognition, which is really helpful in the pet world. But after that, then that's kind of when I got out and started, deeper into Ford K9 was just the parent company of the podcast K9s Talking Scents that I've been running. And then later on, after COVID started, and the friends of mine that I was working with in Las Vegas were like, we probably won't come back at full scale when COVID ends. So if you want to go get your license in Nevada, which is Nevada is unique in the sense that if you do like any time or any type of work where they deem it's safety or security with dogs, you have to get this certain type of license in Nevada. So long story short, is I got the license, and then that kind of really got Ford K9 moving and going. And then after some years in Las Vegas, I was definitely over dealing with the heat of average of 120 degrees a day, especially this time of year right now. And I got an opportunity. Michael Ellis and I had been friends for a couple decades, and I had gone up and did a class at his school. Me and the trainer that works for me, Natalie, we did a class up there on detection for his students. And, he's like, hey, come back. Let's talk some more. We came back, and on the end of the second visit, he just kind of reached out, was like, hey, what do you think about maybe we kind of partner together, but you coming up here and running your business out of the school as well? He could see that I outgrew what I had in Las Vegas, but I wasn't as big enough to take over what he had at his place. So it was kind of a merger in a sense of us working together, doing things. He still did his, not his classes anymore, but he would do seminars, and we did our thing, and we've been doing that ever since. So we have a lot of opportunities by being up there at the school. Michael's usually around anytime we do a class or a seminar up there. Michael will usually pop in. I usually get him to do a day of classes sometimes, just because, I think anybody who's in the dog world, you could probably listen to Michael Ellis talk about anything for a long period of time and never get too bored. So I definitely use my friend card whenever I can to have him spend some time with our students and get to pick his brain or just listen to him, speak about different training topics. And then a year ago, we got bought out by a bigger company, and we created Stratus K9, which is a detection dog services company. And it's mostly bomb dogs right now and firearms dogs. And my trainer, Natalie, is kind of running that now. And I joke around, it's like being promoted in the law enforcement world. It's like being promoted to captain. So I spend my time these days in a lot of online meetings, very similar to this, looking over budgets, doing business proposals, overseeing employees at different areas around the United States and so forth. So more or less, that's in a nutshell, a lot of what I do and how I got to where I'm at today.
Awesome, man. I mean, I have so many questions, but first and foremost, I have to acknowledge Michael Ellis is the GOAT. Not only is he an amazing dog trainer, he's an amazing human being. And I've had him on a live stream, and there's one of my favorite ones. It's actually one of my most viewed live streams that I've done, and I'm just fortunate to have met him in person. And there's just something that goes on when you meet somebody in person, and you're able to respect them even more, right? Especially in the world of being online so much. By the way, I tagged you in the post, so if you want to share that,
I'll hop on over there.
Yeah, hop on. And then, so what did you have dogs as a child or anything? What, like, tell me, I want to go way back. What was your motivation to work with dogs in the Air Force, and how did you get into that?
So it was funny. Kind of how I got into it was there was a neighbor as a little kid. And he was the guy that did police dogs in that area. So it's just, I'll date myself. I was born in the 70s. So in the late 70s, early 80s, he had a business called K9 Incorporated. It was a guy named Bob Gailey. And Bob owned K9 Incorporated, which was the old school drive around in vans, and at night they would cut loose sentry dogs. They would cut them loose on car dealerships, and these dogs would roam the properties. And if anybody broke in, you're going to get chewed up by these dogs. And then by every morning at 4:00 in the morning, his staff would run around and pick up all the dogs and bring them back to the kennel. So he had guard dogs, or these type of dogs, and back in those days, all I had between our backyard and his backyard was a 4-foot chain link fence. So I would see these big, huge Rottweilers and Dobermans and German Shepherds. And of course, I was scared to death of those dogs as a little kid. And then I kind of got a little bit older. And then he also was a reserve deputy in Orange County, Florida. So there was, a police car in the driveway with K9 on it. This is the old school, green and white, cars they had back then. And I would hang out. I was kind of intrigued by the police car as a little kid. So I started hanging out, and I'd make sure I'd be on my little big wheel in his driveway when he'd pull up, and then, try to pet his doggies and that kind of thing. And then what he kind of realized was, even though I was scared, I was also not scared. So that he started using me as like the show, like, hey, look, my dogs don't eat a little kid. This little kid comes around and hangs out with our dogs all the time. So I would go to demos with him and most times watch, but every now and then he'd pull me out and I would, be there next to the dogs. And I forget how old I was. Let's just say 8 to 12 years old, somewhere in those ranges. And so that had a pretty big, profound experience on me. So then fast forward however many years, I'm in my first year of college and I'm taking some night classes. Well, in those night classes are some cops. Those cops, I started becoming friends with them, and they're like, yeah, you got to do a ride along with us. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. How do I go do that? Go to the sheriff's office, fill out some paperwork. They'll approve you, and then we'll get notified when you can come ride. So I go do that. And as I'm leaving the sheriff's office, I see these K9 guys training at their little K9 field. So I kind of pull my car over and I'm just watching, like sometimes people do. And so of course the deputy comes over to me like, hey, can I help you? Is anything wrong? No. This is cool. I'm just watching, my old neighbor, Bob Gailey, used to do that. And he's like, well, he's right over there. And I was like, what? I said, hey, tell him Cameron's over here. Hey, Bob, some kid named Cameron's over here. Cameron. So then the very next day I'm at his kennel and I began working and cleaning kennels, doing all the typical grunt work that comes with, paying your dues as you enter that kind of world. And I did that for a solid, it was 2 years of doing that. But after year 1, he started letting me hang around the police class that was always in the afternoon, late afternoon. So from like 4 p.m. until about usually 4 a.m. So I would go and I would watch. And then after a year of just sitting there watching the police classes, one guy kind of tosses a sleeve at me and says, okay, you've done enough watching. You're going to start catching the dogs in bite work. And then I started laying tracks and doing all that kind of stuff. Well, I think I was 21 at the time. So it wasn't hard to become a police officer. I mean, as far as like what today's standards are and what those standards are back then were different. But at 21, I was going to be kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit. I didn't have life experience and I didn't have a college degree and some other things that were still there. So the guys kind of mentioned, oh, you should do the military. Well, I was also being a typical 21-year-old, not really grounded in anything, didn't have a direction in life. So all the Ford men at one point in time sat me down and said, you need to do something with your life. And of course I was like, let me guess, you want me to go in the military like you guys did and do the Navy like they did? And actually my uncle was like, no, I would recommend the Air Force. And I was like, why the Air Force? And he goes, it's the only branch where the officer is the warfighter. And all the other branches are all the lowest ranking is the warfighter. And when you have the Air Force where it's catered to the pilots and the officers, then that's going to have a different kind of quality of life as opposed to the other way around. And it turned out he was right. I ended up going to a recruiter not too long after that, did the recruiter thing, and then went through the process. And while I was being processed, they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be a police dog handler. And he's like, no. What do you really want to do? We call that general career field. We dump the people who can't qualify stuff into that career field. And I was like, no, that's what I want to go do. So that's what ended up happening. I put in for that, still, I got to police academy. And then when I got to the police academy, the Air Force Police Academy, I saw day one, I walk in the gate doors at K9 tryouts. And I was like, K9 tryouts? I thought I already had K9. Well, turns out, no. I had my opportunity to get into the police academy, which I was in day one, but K9 was a totally separate thing. Military working dog section was different. So I put in my name to try to do it. And I asked my proctor that day, because we had just started the academy, hey, can I go try out for K9? He's like, you haven't been here one day yet. And I was like, well, how often do they have the tryouts? He goes, well, we don't know. They just do them when they need them. So I was like, can I go to that? And he was like, well, if you get all your in-processing done, you can go to that meeting. So sure enough, I walked into that meeting. And when I was in that meeting, they were like, okay, we have 2 open spots. And I look around and there's like 40 people in there. I'm like, well, one will probably go to a woman and one will go to a guy. So I was like, okay, I have a 50% shot out of 40 people here to do this. So I go through the things that they ask us to do. They have you do some marching. They have you do some carrying of like a 70-pound sandbag. They do some simple instruction. Can you follow that? And then they kind of ask some questions. And about 6 weeks later, I found out I was accepted. And then I end up staying at Lackland even longer for another 12 more weeks. And I went to the military working dog school down there at San Antonio.
Cool. And then what did you, I mean, you got selected, and then how was this different? Did you see, I mean, first off, when you were a kid, was there ever a time that you saw a dog do something?
I mean, I watched a dog bite Bob really bad. They were doing a canine demo, and he was playing the bad guy, robbing a lady with a little baby carriage. And as he was running away, and this is back in the day, they didn't really have, I mean, they either had sleeves that were huge or it was a homemade hidden sleeve. So that day he was wearing like a homemade hidden sleeve with like fire hose and like a heavy jacket and some stuff. Well, this dog bit him in the leg, not the arm, and filleted his leg wide open so badly so that they had to land the sheriff's helicopter on the football field, pick him up and fly him to the hospital. So I remember seeing that, and I remember going through that. And I just remember just the hardness, like these dogs were no joke. I mean, it was, again, a different day and age, different way of training, but these dogs were hard. And so I remember just always having that respect for what these dogs were capable of. Going into the military at that point in time, and now you're fast. This would be 1996. So when I entered the military at that point, I'd already had a couple years around being around police officers and dogs and seeing stuff and being a decoy, laying tracks. So I had a decent understanding, which I'm hoping is probably what maybe gave me an opportunity, a little bit of a leg up compared to who the other 30 something people I was going against that day. And it's a catch-22 when I looked at it too. If I was the K9 guys, I might have been like, well, maybe I don't want this kid because he already comes with some baggage, maybe. Or you go, well, I don't want to have somebody that's probably going to wash out either. So maybe let's take somebody with experience. Either way, I got there and I wasn't going to lose the opportunity. I made sure, I didn't care. Again, cleaning kennels was nothing to me. So that part, when our first weekend that at the military working dog school, myself and the other handler, who actually was a woman who got picked, we both were in there cleaning kennels, doing what we're supposed to do. And I already kind of knew like how a kennel inspection would go because I had been through it, because Bob was a former Army guy back in the day. And to put a little history to Bob Gailey, Bob was a gentleman who graduated from Pat Cahill. Pat Cahill came over from the UK and is kind of the father of the modern police dogs that exist today. Because back then when he came over, all there was what was defined as sentry dogs that just basically bit anything that crossed a line. So Bob went to a school with Pat Cahill. Pat Cahill was the one that started showing them that dogs can have an off switch. They don't need to be constantly trying to bite anything and everything. It was still archaic in today's standards, but it was significantly better than the old Vietnam era chew everything up kind of dogs that existed as police dogs back then. So by having somebody like that, I already kind of knew some of the, like how these games are played when you go into a military system and you're going through kennels and all of that kind of stuff. So that was some good lessons that prepared me for somewhat of an easier transition into the military working dog life.
Dudes, man, that's something that I think there's an element of that missing in today's dog training world, especially in the pet world, right?
Mhm.
Is that aspect of paying your dues. Do you know how I paid my dues?
How's that?
Community service.
There you go. There you go.
I was
One
like,
way or another,
yeah.
we're doing it.
Yeah, I was like, I like dogs. I'll go to the Idaho Humane Society, you know,
Yep.
out there cleaning kennels but then I got to meet some dogs, and I would direct people like, this dog's really cool, man. You guys got to check this one out. Make sure to consider him. And I had one dog in particular that I wanted to get adopted, and I got him adopted. But yeah, that's it. And you're when you started, I mean, I just read this book not too long ago. What was it? Angels of Our Better Nature.
Mhm.
And it talks about the evolution of civilization and societies, and actually how we're living in the safest time in our history. When we look back thousands of years, and torture and all these different things were commonplace in the public square, and it was viewed as entertainment. And
Mhm.
in the 60s, there was women's rights, human rights, gay rights, and animal rights, right? And you're talking about Vietnam, which was in
Mhm.
the 60s, and then moving up into the 70s, and even up to today. And you've kind of been in it for the whole stretch here. And
Yeah.
have you seen a lot of changes that have happened from when you just started? And we talked about the bite suits. There's a lot of different innovations with the bite suits. There's the e-collar. Um, I mean, I can't even imagine, both good and bad,
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
changes
there's
that you've seen.
tons of evolution, clearly, most for the good, most for the betterment of how to communicate to dogs, most in the betterment of understanding dogs, because there was little to no research back in any of those days. And I would say really not much until you hit the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, where we started seeing a lot more investment into research of dogs. Not that there, like I said, not that there wasn't before, but just not at the frequency. And I would say the ability to fully support a lot of the ideas that have been in the dog community of why did this occur, or what's the capability of the dogs, or how do we, let's just say the simplest version, how do we reinforce, you know, what's, what's better, toys, food, there's all these different things, communication. And the part that really got me pulled into that world was the cognitive side, understanding their mind. And understanding their mind is one of the best ways. It gives you a user's manual to some extent of what the dog prefers in its learning model. Meaning, is it a memory based dog? Does it solve problems through experience and remembering how that goes? Every dog has memory, but some dogs just operate out of that section of their brain more so than other ones. Other ones are referred to as higher inference dogs. These are dogs who will kind of challenge things and figure things out and do observation and testing. So those dogs are more apt to, and you know, you can go down these rabbit holes of breeds, but I'll do it into breed like wise, like, so sporting breeds versus herding breeds. In general, herding breeds tend to be a little bit higher on the inference side of the scale, because they're bred to make decisions based on what a flock is doing. Is it moving? Is it doing this? So genetically, they've been bred for these great qualities to make decisions and to move things left, right, forward, etc. Then your sporting breeds, which come from the hunting dog community, where they have to remember, where did a bird fall, how many birds fell, where, or a technique to be successful in flushing a bird, and so forth. So the sporting breeds can tend to have more high memory scores than, let's say, the herding breed. But I'm just saying that to paint it with a broad stroke, because I've had lots of dogs from those categories reverse those trends. So it's not a set in stone. But if I took all the numbers and I was looking at all the numbers, I can safely say sporting breeds will probably score higher in memory. Herding breeds score higher in inference, as a general number, that if I took it from all the data that we've done. So Dr. Brian Hare from Duke University is probably one of the more famous ones who did a lot of that research and shared that research. That's who I learned it from. I got to go to Duke University and go through all the training of this, and did it. And I brought it back to the Navy SEAL program, and we used that in our selection process for dogs. So we still did all of our things that we liked, things that we look for in selecting a dog for the Navy SEAL program. But at the same time, as soon as we picked that dog, then we went and ran it through cognitive testing to see, did the dog cognitively match what we think we want, which was a higher inference-based dog, a little less memory. And if we saw anomalies to that and we still wanted the dog, the coolest thing that it gave us was it showed us that, okay, if this dog's memory score was higher than we preferred, we just need to be really careful that we don't create patterns too much, because a dog will start memorizing its work through the pattern. Meaning, I need to change the training location more frequently. If I train at this location more than a couple of times, it'll already kind of game how it'll use that space to solve a detection problem.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have a dog who has less memory, I joke around, it's like from that movie 50 First Dates, 10-Second Tom. It's like, hi, I'm Tom. And then 10 seconds later, those dogs, they find something and they totally forget what they found. And then you can send them back again and they're like, oh, look, I found something, So it gave us, and what was really cool was our results from that was this wasn't a desired result we were looking for. We weren't trying to reduce time, but dogs, after we did cognitive testing on them, our training time was reduced by about 30%, which is pretty significant. We also had a higher success rate of dogs making it through the program. Now, that was a direct reflection of the fact that we did not, if there was a dog that we didn't feel like we liked it, we liked a lot of things it did subjectively. It had really good motivation, or it was sound environmentally, or its bite work was, there's qualities of its bite work that we liked for the missions that they did. When we did the cognitive testing, if the score was not acceptable to us, it was too much of one or the other, we would pass on the dog. Well, because we started doing that, the dogs that we picked made it through from selection to deployment, and those numbers went up. So that was what we were trying to do, was get better about selecting dogs. The byproduct was not only did we get a little bit better about selecting the dogs, we also had our training time speed up, because what we learned was we weren't spinning our wheels as much. We didn't have to do as much of, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, till we found the answer. We pretty much knew from the cognitive testing, oh, we just need to change this or this pretty quickly, and the dog will understand what we're trying to do. And that was what ended up happening. We just did not waste as much time running through options till we found the right option. We were able to navigate to the right option faster because we knew the dog better, because we did those cognitive tests.
What does a cognitive test look like? Some examples.
So it's basically, it's a series of 3 different tests on the inference. So there's inference tests and memory tests. So let's say the first inference test is we call deceptive pointing cue test. So we have 2 objects, usually buckets, on the ground at a pre-designated distance. They're all measured out because there's a reason to the measurements. It's based on how they make decisions, the distance it takes to make a decision, and so forth. And we're not trying to have them use their nose. So you basically show the dog an object like their toy or food or something, and then you go stand behind, let's say, the right bucket. Then I walk over to the left bucket and I put the piece of food or toy under that bucket. I go back to the middle. I stand dead center between the 2 buckets and I point to the right bucket. So I'm pointing to the incorrect bucket. Will they make the inference that they saw the thing they want under the other bucket that I'm not pointing to? And will they do that, or will they follow, are they more apt to follow my gestural communication? And we're looking, and you do that test 6 times. And out of 6 times, do they always follow your point? Was it 50-50? Was it chance, basically? Like sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Or was it they always went to where they knew the answer was, where the item they wanted was at, despite what you did? All these tests come from tests they use on young children to understand communication and development. So our second test is a marker cue test. And what that test basically is, we just put a foreign object, something that the dog doesn't know, doesn't interact with. It's just, usually it could be a roll of tape, it could be a square little block, whatever it is. And then that item, now the dog cannot see where you put the item they want. You have what's called an occluder, a board that you have out in front, and the dog doesn't see where the item goes. The only thing they do see is you put this object on top of one of the buckets and you go back to the middle. And can they make the inference that the thing that you put on top of the bucket could mean something? Now, sometimes people, the first time they hear this, are like, well, of course, they're going to go to the last place you put something. The test doesn't do it that way. The test is randomized. So sometimes you put the thing down in a bucket and you still go to another one and you come back in. You're always going to both buckets. Where the last one is, sometimes is where the item is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I put it down, go to the other one, come back. So there is some part of that. And basically what this is we're pulling back a layer each time. So the very first time, they saw where their item went. The second time, they did not see where their item's at, but they still see two buckets. Just one bucket has something weird on top of it. And do they make the right decision? The third test is now we take away them. Not only they no longer get to see where the item goes, they no longer see buckets anymore. So now there's a cloth, a fabric cloth that we put over the buckets, but one bucket, there's only one bucket used. So basically one fabric is laying flat in the ground. The other fabric has like a lump underneath it. Will they make the inference that the one with the lump is the one that has the bucket underneath it? Believe it or not, a lot of dogs don't follow that because, again, through that layered system, they've seen buckets for 2 rounds. Round 1, they saw where their object went. Round 2, no more object. And then round 3, no more buckets. And can they still make inferences based off of what you're showing them?
This is fascinating, dude. And then so when they go, what are you looking for? Just acknowledgement? Do they have
all they got to do is their nose has to get with basically or like their head or whatever their body or foot could be there. I just say their nose because usually they're leaning forward when they're going there, getting within an inch of that item. So as long as they're going there, like there's been tests they've done, they put like blue dots in the ground, and if the dog crossed the plane of the blue dot area, you could count that as a choice. Most dogs, when you're doing this, will run right to the bucket, knock the bucket over, or try to get it, and so it becomes extremely obvious. You have some dogs that do I call like a flyby. They go by it and then they turn around, they come to it. So it all kind of depends. The hardest part about these tests is people being able to follow the instruction and stay without cueing themselves. That's usually the hardest part. People inadvertently, their eyes will veer toward the answer. Their shoulders may tilt towards it. It's little subconscious things that you don't know you're doing, which is why you always do it with other people around. So that way they're able to call you out if you're making an error that the dog might be using, again, inference, to solve the problem. So
the importance of having people watch. I mean, if you can't, then videotape yourself. But dude, I did this, and somebody was like, "Hey, man, you realize every time you mark that dog, you nod your head?" And I was like, "I do." Like and literally, like it's just natural for me. That's just something I do. And then in the inference test, the deceptive pointers cue. When does a dog fail out, or what are you looking for? Are you looking for
there's no pass or fail. You're collecting data, and when you're looking at is your percentages of accuracy. Did they find it X amount of times within those six repetitions each test? So basically there's going to be 18 repetitions total between all 3 tests, each test. But where the item is technically randomized. So there's a sheet that'll say left, right, right. It all randomized. So sometimes you're going to the same side twice. Sometimes you're going to another side, twice or once. So it's all randomized each test. So there's no predicting it. So this is where what happens is sometimes if you go twice to the certain side, a dog may go to that side the third time just because you went there twice. So that shows you potentially that dog is going to be a memory-based type dog because you're going off of the pattern. When you get your memory test, all the memory test really is this test, you have 3 buckets out. They see you place the item underneath a bucket. Then you put this long occluder, this board out in front, and that board blocks all 3 buckets. And it's going to have various time delays. Some time delays are 15 seconds. Some are 30 seconds. And then there's even some I've seen that have been even longer. But 15 and 30 seconds are your average ones for these tests. And you're looking at what happens during that delay. Does the dog remember where to go? Some dogs, it's amazing. You're watching them as a time delay, and they keep looking towards where that side of the board where they saw the object go. Other dogs are just off in space looking around, and when you pull the thing, they have no idea where they're going. So that's kind of the cool part about this is it's funny. You can like Brian Hare jokes. He's like, I teach this class. I came up with a lot of the tests, and I can't even predict. Well, he's like, even my own dog, I thought it would have this score, this score, and this score. And it turns out I was completely wrong. It was this, this, and this. So that's why I've liked it. It's not an easy test that it's not a test designed to prepare for. It's not a test that's a pass or fail. It's a test just to see, what does the dog typically like to use to solve problems? What strategy does it like to use? Is it a memory-based strategy, or is it a strategy of FAFO? I'm going to try some things and we're going to find out if it works or not. So that's kind of where a lot of this thing comes from. And that's the part that's super helpful that I really enjoyed.
Do you
helpful.
Do you plot this data on a graph, and then do you have like a visual?
Yeah, we have like these little math problems that we do that I use to kind of help people, kind of figure it out, like what to do. So that's why it's super important that, you have to get people's emotions out of it. When I do people like their own dogs, when they come to the seminars, I always tell them, like, look, you're going to look at this. If your dog makes whatever error so many times, you're going to be like, my dog is dumb. No, this isn't a quantitative test of how smart a dog is, because smart is relative, right? A dog who maybe does dog who does, let's say, medical detection, is that a smart dog? Or a dog who goes through the ice packs in avalanche areas and finds somebody? Or a dog who lives with somebody in their house and helps them in any way? Like, smart is like, look at us. Like, if we ask them if so-and-so was smart, people could debate that all day long. So what we want to do is these tests are just kind of designed to help us understand what strategy that dog might employ to solve the world in front of it. And if I'm going to be a trainer and I'm going to train this dog to do whatever it is, that it could be anything from pet obedience to detection to other stuff, what will its strategy most likely be? And do I need to be aware of that strategy as something that helps it or hurts it, depending on what we do?
It's like, what approach we take. Do we lure? Do we shape? If the dog has more inference, then I would assume that we would shape. No. Right? Wait, am I right?
Yeah. So higher inference will generally mean shaping can come into play easier, because they're willing to try things. That didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. Now, motivation is still part of that equation, but a dog with high memory, let's say I have two things on the ground, I'm shaping detection, right? And it's going to be right now the item on the right side. So the minute I switch it, a dog who's stronger in memory is going to take longer in most cases to be willing to try something different, versus the dog who's higher in inference is like, I'm here, nothing's happening. Why isn't this working? Let me try something different. And then they might move to it faster. So, but if I'm in, let's say, an assistance dog world, I think memory is much more an advocate for me than high inference. I don't want a dog who wants to go test this, and this. I want a dog that understands these are what we have to do. We come to a crosswalk, we always have to stop. Or if my handler needs some type of assistance, I always do these things, which is why, not by design, but the dogs that have done better in these fields are typically your Labradors, your Golden Retrievers, and things of that nature. Again, broad numbers, not people will give us happily in the comments, oh, my Border Collie is fantastic in this. And that's absolutely true and correct. But broad numbers, this is why you might see a certain breed type be used more frequently, just because genetically it kind of comes to the table with the things that job needed better than another dog. You don't see too many Labradors doing mondioring. You don't see too many Labradors doing herding. But I guarantee somebody out there will happily show us a video of a Labrador doing herding. So again, this isn't, they can't. This is just, hey, here's some information. Utilize it to make some better decisions in how you might set up your training progression plan, and or when you might need to deviate. And I'll give you another one. A dog with high memory, if I'm doing, let's say in my world, detection, if I do a certain odor for too many reps, that odor becomes so powerful that when there's a deviation to that odor, it's maybe mixed with something else or is contained in a different way. That dog with higher memory is going to take longer to adjust to that variation than the dog with higher inference, who might generalize faster. So if I start off my training knowing that I have a dog with high memory, I'm going to make sure that training adjusts way faster. Like, it only gets a day or two of this type of chemical before I give it a variation of that the next day. And then that dog, the sooner I show it variations to its target, it's much more flexible. But if I keep using my same odor and I keep rewarding day after day, I do a week of it, I've built a pretty robust reinforcement history to a very specific thing that could change depending on the environment and the work that we're doing.
This is mind blowing, man. And to me, I'm thinking that memory is almost stability in some aspects.
It does kind of provide that, because that's what a lot of dogs are. Some dogs are looking for when it comes to certain things. What's predictable, right? That's a lot of what guides their decision making. Is this outcome predictable in a positive way, or is this outcome predictable in an aversive way? And aversive could mean a lot of things. Just simply not getting what it wants in some dogs could be aversive, not aversive in a punishment way, but just not getting what they want can cause some dogs to get stuck. So depending again, what the job is the dog has to do, we just need to be aware of. It's like, the best way I can make this analogy is like, if you're going to be a teacher of some young students, some young kids, wouldn't you like to have some kind of baseline information of like, Johnny needs more hands-on learning, where Sally needs more visual learning before she goes hands-on, and vice versa. So some of these things, the more I know what the student needs or what their natural tendency is, I should become better as a trainer to communicate what the task is and to make the dog robust enough to handle variations that might pop up in whatever that job might be.
Well, and and as pet dog trainers, and it's important for us to know our humans' learning style, right? Visual, auditorial, kinesthetic. If I'm a kinesthetic learner, but I'm also an auditory. I mean, but doing stuff, like when I learn gnosis, the knowledge through the experience of it, so much more powerful to me. And you know, and I think that is something that we leave out as dog trainers, especially in the pet dog world, is like speaking over to clients, not providing analogies, and getting to know your clients so they can carry forward this behavior change into the future, especially if you do board and trains or anything like that. How does this transfer? How does this knowledge transfer from what you did in this different environment with this dog? And then how do you get to communicate to your client, knowing their learning style, knowing how to communicate it to them where they're really going to get it, the importance of making the changes and carrying on this behavior forward.
And I learned, it's funny because I went through all this cognition stuff and I didn't apply it to my human side of teaching. And it wasn't until being around Michael for a couple of years where over the past year or so, I really evolved to teaching more like he does. And the example I'm giving is those who've been around Michael. Michael doesn't teach with PowerPoints. He has a piece of paper in his hand, his glasses around his face, and he's talking. And as he's talking, he's engaging with the audience, and he engages through kind of reading them, like who's kind of following, who's looks like they're maybe not totally getting it. And that kind of gauges how he carries forward whatever lecture he's going on. And I came from the world where it was death by PowerPoint. You know, cops and military, they love PowerPoints. We will run and we will read them verbatim to you, which is a big no-no too. So I had many years of that. That was how I taught for years. And the past year solid, I have not used PowerPoints at all. In fact, I'm much more like Michael. I sit down with the audience because what I've learned is by just having conversation with the audience, starting off with like, hey, what questions do you have? Does anybody have this kind of problem? And usually everybody's got one of these issues in the detection dog world. And I'll ask that question and then people will answer. Then I'll ask them, well, why do they think this happened? And then from there, it starts building out the conversation, the lecture. And by the end of 2 to 3 hours, I've covered everything I would have ever covered in all my PowerPoints. But I did so in a way with the audience that matches more or less because they're the ones driving the train of the topics. They're also the one driving the train of what they need, like not only topics, but like their communication style. So I can tell if I'm answering a question and it's not connecting, then I need to change maybe the example I'm giving, or maybe ask them more questions. So then maybe they'll explain more detail to me that I'll go, oh, okay, now I know why you either did understand or need more explanation. And I can't tell you how much of a game changer that has been through, my lectures. I would say like over the past year or so, those who've been in my lectures now see that. And here's the best part I love as an instructor. People are way more apt to write stuff down. So the lectures now, everybody's usually got a notepad out or writing, because what everybody typically does is they'll do this when your PowerPoint thing comes up. They're like,
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna do.
click. Yeah. So that's that. And then it sits in their camera roll. They'll never look at it again, but there'll be like 25 photos of every slide that you have. Some will go, but most, when I asked them later on, did you ever go back to those photos? Oh, I took 45 more photos after your lecture of my dog and my friend, and and then it just goes up in your feed and you never see it again. So by doing it this way, I found common ground with those attending. I also let those attending drive the direction of conversation and education to their needs. And just after you do it so many years, whatever your training topic is, it, but you sometimes need those guardrails to fall off. Like for me, the guardrails were the training wheels were the PowerPoints, because then that would keep me, here's the topic. It limited me, because many that have been around me know I'll still go down these side trails and wormholes and get way off topic, and then eventually, hopefully, maybe find my way back. But what the PowerPoint could do better sometimes it would guide me back. But man, was it so limiting, because what would happen is I would just focus on what the PowerPoint screen said, and I'm just talking to the students. The students may ask questions, but anybody who's been a teacher knows a vast majority of your audience doesn't feel comfortable asking questions out in the open to everybody. So what do? The very first break that you get, you'll have 3 to 5 people all circle around you and ask the questions that they didn't feel comfortable to ask. So, and that to me is missed out opportunity for the others in the room, because there's always others who probably have a same or similar question. So by now doing it this way, I tell them, I'm like, hey guys, this is how this engagement is going to work. I'm here for you guys. You guys ask the questions. I'll give you best answers, and then we'll go out and practically do some things to see what works, what doesn't work. But here's the only rule I have. You have to ask questions. And if you're the type that doesn't feel comfortable asking questions like this, no worries. Just please write it down. And on the break, just drop the question up at my table or wherever I'm at, and I will read the question afterwards. So again, I just like it so much more for the fact that there's a lot more student buy-in. They're more invested. They are the ones in charge of where my educational information goes based on their needs. And the minute we go to practicals, which we go to practicals faster now because I'm not hogging their time because I had 45 PowerPoint slides to go through. Now I'm driven by just answering the questions. And if there's some glaring thing that I know that the audience missed, I might bring up something. But in most cases, I haven't had too many yet that they haven't hit all the same or the more relevant questions that are typically in my world. So usually people are going to be motivated to ask something important to them that solves a problem that they have.
Are you speaking to scent detection? Are you speaking to what is your main audience? Just scent?
Yeah. My audience is pretty much extensively detection these days. That's kind of where I live. When my time ended with the SEAL teams, I had a choice to enter the world as a guy. I could have done bite work. I could have, most people, which is funny, I've been doing it now. I'm going on to 32 years in this dog world, and 25 and some, let's say 20 something has been bite work, tracking, obedience, all the stuff that was relevant and important in the law enforcement and military worlds, the special operations worlds. But when I got out, I already knew there was a pretty big set of people out there that focused on bite work, tracking, obedience. Like that world was pretty populated. Detection was not so populated. And as I got to learn, detection wasn't so populated for two main reasons. Number one, they either thought it was very simple. You just put something out, the dog finds it, or two, it was too complicated and there was a little bit too much science to it that they didn't feel comfortable going too crazy with it. So it's now gained and changed. And I mean, just since 2018, when I started doing it more often, or when I left the SEAL team, or the SEAL team job ended for me, was I went into, okay, I'm going to go this detection dog route. The science community that I came from was already heavy in detection. So I was able to kind of take some of the stuff from the science world and share it forward with what I joke around is our knuckle dragging cop and military world that we didn't understand. So I was kind of a conduit that would take some of the geeky stuff, and I was basically detection for dummies. And I would kind of try to break it down as simple as I could. And I even had lessons I learned there, which was the fact that I spent a lot of years catering to my fellow dog nerds like me. And I didn't realize this about 2 years ago, where I was leaving off a significant number of my audience that just doesn't care about the science. They just want their dog to work better for them. So I've matured enough to go, okay, I need to switch from being so heavily science and being a science translator or my interpretation of what some science was, to now just being, what's your problem? What do you have? What do you think is a good way to fix it? And if that's a good idea, I'll help you through it. And if we need to talk about more ideas, here's a few more ideas. Which one seems to be the easiest for you to do, to accomplish, to get progress? And that's the big change there.
Well, it's a Socratic method of not just giving them the answer, but getting them to understand exactly where they're at by answering with questions, right? And so it's something that's tried and true. But before we go, man, I found this, and I wanted to share this because even though we're talking about the science, I think that it's important, and I wanted to, let me see, how do I share this? And you can share your screen, just so you know, FYI.
Oh, okay.
One of my clients, or one of my people I was talking to, just started sharing their screen, and I was just like, oh wow, look at that. But I found Brian Hare.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so this is quite a while ago, Jiminy Chris, 14 years ago, it looks like. And I don't know what we're seeing. I just saw the buckets, and I saw
it looks like it could be pointing cue test, where this one, because they did the pet dogs, they pointed to the answer. And that was when they were first doing it. These dogs were designed to, or the testing was, would the dog follow gestural communication, which is the easiest of all the tests, which is, of course, most dogs will go to where you point. So he loaded one, and he fake loaded one.
That's right. And he put the little
now point to the correct answer, or the incorrect answer in this case. I don't know the premise of this one. Did the dog go to the incorrect or the correct?
And it's not a treat.
It looks like incorrect. The dog was supposed to go to where he pointed, because had the dog been correct, they would have knocked the bucket over. So that test was the first version, which is called pointing cue test, where you point to the answer. But years later, when I got involved with this, I was like, hey guys, I want to see, will they disobey? Will they, if odor is over here, but I'm telling the dog go this way, I want the dog that goes towards the odor, not where I'm pointing, because that could mean finding a bomb, even though I think over here is a better area. So he was like, oh, okay, we'll do the same test, but we'll just point to the wrong answer. And he did different versions where he points with different hands. So that one, he pointed across his body like this, and that ends up being more demonstrative for some dogs. It's awkward for the human, versus pointing to the answer, which in this case was this way, I'd be pointing that way. So you can go into some of the details of, he's tested by like pointing with her feet. He's tested with your face going a certain way. They've run through like lots of versions, and the version they've ended with is you look and point with your hand to the side that it's at. So if it's the right side, my face looks right, my hand goes out, and it's usually like your hand's like in a flat position, like I'm pointing that way, so you're pointing towards it. So it's an open hand and a face towards that side, and that becomes pretty. A lot of dogs are like, yep, yeah, I understand that.
Now, let's get back to what we were chatting about with the detection simple versus too complicated, right? Because, and I've always loved detection work. I've always loved watching it. And that's why I've wanted you, because I've watched some of your stuff on there. And you do, do you do the pipes, the BBC?
Yes. Yeah, I have the PVC pipe wall. Yeah.
Dude, I want to make one. But I don't want to screw it up. That's my thing, is like, I want to do this right. And I want to be able to not contaminate and know how do I ensure that it's not contaminating. But it's also, I'm thinking like, man, you even have to pick out the right dog. I mean, there's just so that's where this like too complicated. I can see how people get there, but dude, I'm a nerd and I don't really like the bite. I've been in the bite sports and seen it. It's just too machismo for me.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I'd rather sit, read, and figure stuff out and just watch. And even with the bite sports, like I'm I was with Bart Bell and the decoy gave the signal, and I was like, dude, why would I ever want a decoy to control my dog? Like, and
Yeah.
I asked everybody, and they were like, well, dude, it's just the way the sport works. And I'm like, well, that's stupid because
Yeah.
there's idiots in the world that are going to do stuff that are going to provoke a bite. And
Sure.
then Bart took me out in the field. He's like, hey, Bill. I was like, what's up? He's like, I go.
Yeah. He makes a
So,
noise. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, oh, dude, okay, cool. Like I thought I was
Yeah.
going crazy here, man, just trying
Yeah.
to overthink this. Um, but
No, but you're right. I mean, so let's unpack what you started with. So the detection world loves its contraptions, for lack of a better description, tools that it uses. So you're right now, I think we're kind of on a block/brick wall trend currently,
yeah, I
due
see it all
to,
the time.
yeah, due to some, there's some great trainers out there with a big social media following. So, and they know how to kind of capitalize on what they share. And since I've been doing this, there's these different periods of time. So here's the first thing. All the tools and things that we have all have good and limitations to them. There is no perfect. So whether someone likes a wheel, the odor wheels or the scent wheels, depending on what they call it, those are typically where the can is on, like looks like an octopus kind of thing. The dog goes around the wheels. There's that. There's the brick walls. There's the block walls. Brick walls became popular because of so many small holes that you can really do. Now, the con to that would be, well, depending on what you're training the dog to do, number one, can your training substance fit within that small hole? Maybe yes, maybe no. And if it goes into there, does your substance potentially contaminate that item? And if it is a substance that is highly contaminating, then you probably have to keep getting rid of some of your bricks. And it's the same thing with block walls. So, and I would say the difference between a brick wall and a block walls, the blocks that we have over here in the United States have these bigger holes to them. So you can put a vessel with inside that can help reduce contamination, not eliminate it, but reduce. Then you have the pipe wall that you brought up, which is what I share, which is it's you learn how snow globes are made when you're doing this because you're cutting PVC. I took 300 feet of PVC pipe and cut it down to 5-inch segments. So that took 2 days to do. But all the sawdust or all the PVC dust that comes from that will make wherever you're cutting look like you live in a snow globe. So anyway, the premise behind it, and I got this from a good friend of mine in Canada. He's a very well-known trainer too. So anyway, but I saw these things that in one of his training buildings that he had, Brad Gillespie, and I was like, I like that. And then I just did kind of like my own version of it, but he had a couple of versions. So anyway, what I liked about it was once I used, let's say this, whatever PVC pipe I used, you can simply just pull it out and remove it, go sterilize, clean it, sterilize it, do whatever, do a quick air gun over that area to blow out any lingering odor that might be in that area, let it set, and then put a new pipe in with another odor or the same odor in a different area, whatever you chose to do. So what I liked about that one is it had less negative fallout than some of the other options that I had. And with the pipes, holy cow, can you really get a dog to have to use heavy sniff frequency to work their way through it? Because there's so many holes. Where the bricks and the block wall are going to have still a decent number of holes, but they're going to be spread out in a different way. So there you go. That's the video I get. I had to pin that one because so many questions come into that. So that video
so
kind of
cool.
shares. There you go. There's some of the dimensions, and I put 30 feet, I think, on that one. And
I'm
it's
building
300 feet, not 30 feet. But on the back side of that wall, as when it goes around, I have plastic pegboard, which is even smaller holes on the back of that. Which is, here you go. It's going around to it now. There you go. That is on the opposite side. So I can put whatever odor in the pipe, and then the opposite side is that pegboard, plastic peg. Do not use the white Formica pegboard because it's fiberboard on the backside. and that stuff is super absorbent to odor.
Totally.
So you need to make sure you're using plastics. Plastics just makes it easier to do cleaning to it, and air, using your air guns to kind of clean it out. There's handheld air guns now. There's air compressors. There's just have to be, we call it the pit stations, where we have to go through, clean things between runs, maybe have some time delays between stuff. You might be able to see some of it in the back there. But in any case, yeah, we get to, it's just another tool. But and here's the thing I have to share with everybody: don't get stuck on one tool. That's one of the best ones. That's one of the best walls right there. That someone saw my wall. She trains with us. She's been to my trainer's course, Lale, up in Canada. Her team made that. They added some supports and did some things better than I did. But it's just another tool. And the only thing you have to be careful of, whatever you use, wheel, boxes, walls, etc., you have to be careful that don't use it too much. This also goes back to those memory dogs. The more time I do the pipe wall, the more my dogs think odor is in pipe walls, not other things.
Totally.
So whatever your tool is, just make sure you're constantly changing it out. But the more tools you have, the better opportunity you have. So for me, my new place, I have my block wall, I have that pipe wall, I have a wheel, and I have boxes. And depending on where I'm at in training, every couple days, I'm changing whatever odor is in. So that way the dog understands it's not just to the context of a block wall or a pipe wall or a wheel. Odor can be in any of these things and more as we progress through training. But again, being aware of what your dog's learning style is, if you have that high memory aspect, you're going to deal with dogs that are going to go, got it. I'm most likely going to encounter odor within this type of construction or this type of context. So yeah, all those things that you're sharing there are all things that
a variety.
So don't ever let anybody, like, because I see this a lot of times. Well, I don't want to use this because so-and-so told me that was a bad idea. The only thing I can say that I don't think is a great idea is things that are made out of wood, just because wood is so porous and absorbs so well that you just have to be careful that if you're using whatever substance, that it doesn't absorb in the wood. So if you can use the same thing, whether it be in metal form, plastic form, whatever, utilize those things, because you can reduce some of the contamination and or inadvertent other odors that you're not looking for into that. So yeah, those are all those things are great tools right there.
Well, and the thing is too, is that people have to understand, like, we have 5 million scent cells, where some of these, especially these scent dogs, are upwards of 220 million scent cells. And so just because we think that something's clean, like, it's contaminated and it's trash. Like, if you I can see just those little nooks and crannies in those bricks, the porous nature of metal. And if you guys ever watched those zoom in videos where they'll take and zoom in on something, they're so cool, because it just shows you all these little pockets that scent can hide into. And now, what do you think about manufactured scents versus real scents? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, in our world, I would say there's probably 3 types of categories when it comes to detection training aids or materials that you're using to teach a dog an odor. So your first one is whatever the substance is that you're looking for, whatever in its form. And there, depending on what you're using and what you're getting, is the sample you're using have its own contamination, its own deterioration, or whatever it is. So you have to be aware of that even though it's real doesn't mean it's perfect. Okay. So, but training on what you're looking for will increase the helpfulness of the dog understanding the target. And again, like I was saying, if I do 200 reps of my training aid, even if it's a real substance, it's going to learn what my training aid smells like, how I store it, my things attached to it, what right, wrong, or indifferent, its impurities, whatever it may be, it's whatever it's crossed with or mixed with to make it adhere to something. So whether it be some type of substance, you can go the drug route, the bomb route. There's all these different things that are connected to the chemical makeup or the profile. So if I train on the real stuff and I train on it frequently, then my dog will get really good at my stuff. The minute I go train with Jim Bob's down the road, how he stores it, maybe where he got it from, has a slight variation to it in some way or another. And if a dog has a long reinforcement history of it being presented to them in this way, it may be a little bit harder for them to generalize to it in a different way. So what I try to share is, even if you use real has its own things that you must consider, which means I need to show my dog variations of whatever that target substance is, depending on the work that I'm doing. Pure. So then the professional world went really heavy on, if we train on this pure chemical, and if I train solely on this chemical, my dog will find it in all the environments. Well, again, what we learned was dogs trained on the purest form of something will get very used to the pure form, and some dogs just don't adapt to that change. So again, the reinforcement history to that specific pure chemical can also be problematic. So that's your real substance world and the pros and cons to that world. Now we have something kind of in the middle, which is absorption training aids, which is your what they're called get scent tubes. Or a lot of people will do the dog trainer version, which could be your cotton balls, your Q-tips, your gauze pads, t-shirt material, sticky tape. All these people use all types of materials that will absorb an odor. And there's good about that, but there's also the problems with that. The problems with that is, first thing is, how much odor absorbed to the material. In some cases, you don't know. In some cases, if you buy some stuff that you can buy on the market, there's a company, Precision Explosives, that already sells these things already preloaded with odor. And they can tell you, because they're using machines to tell you how much odor is, or this is the amount of soak time, and this is the burn off rate, because the polymer they're using will burn off that chemical at a certain rate. But if I take a cotton ball and I just stick it with my training aids, I may not know how long that concentration will last for. And I don't have, as a handler or a trainer, I don't have a machine that measures or that can tell me how much is there. And that may not matter to a lot of people. Some people it does. Some people it's like, well, I need to know, because here comes the logical question. What's the difference between, let's say, that cotton ball that sat now for maybe an hour in the training problem, as opposed to, let's say, a training aid that sat in a drawer for a while and I pulled out that training aid and I've left it now for 20 minutes? Is that lingering odor the same amount as that cotton ball that I want my dog to find, but in the empty drawer, I'm like, don't pay attention to that. But because as the handler, I don't know for sure what those concentrations are, you just have to be making sure that you're making informed decisions on what you're using. So the absorption materials vary based on what people will use. Sometimes toothpicks, like I said, cotton balls. I've seen people use paper clips. Printer labels are popular. The thing with printer label that somebody has to consider is, whatever you're using as your absorption material, you need to also have a clean, unabsorbed one. So if I need to have, if I'm using, let's say, cotton balls, I need to have soaked cotton ball in the environment. I need to have an unsoaked cotton ball in the environment, just so the dog doesn't inadvertently start going cotton ball as part of the picture. Yeah. Because, and here's something I have to caution. People are like, oh, yep, I do that. I'm great. I'm like, okay, cool. But does your dog, now let's take the cotton ball out of the equation. Does your dog give you the same response if I absorb it to something else? Because the dog might go odor plus cotton ball, relevant, I get reinforced. Cotton ball by itself, definitely don't pay attention to that. I don't get reinforcement. And the same thing could happen if I put odor out in a different way. By itself, no cotton ball. You could have some dogs go, it's missing the cotton balls. Therefore, odor plus cotton ball was what I got reinforced for. Odor by itself, maybe, maybe not. And usually what happens is handlers will see that. They'll see, well, the dog's not hitting it. And most handlers will adjust pretty quickly to, well, I need to reinforce quicker, or I need to assist, whatever way they choose. And they work their way through it. And so that's the pros and cons to the absorption side of things, because you're adding something to the odor picture that is non-target, but it is a vessel or a surface or substrate that is designed to absorb and give off the odor. Just know that you have to make sure that your dog isn't learning odor plus that substance, and that your dog is good without that substance being there. And the substance by itself, the surface or substrate or the material by itself, is irrelevant. So right. These are the things that don't get thought of, right? These are things that are like, oh, I just put it out, and it gets oversimplified. And then your last category is what they call mimics or pseudos. And mimics or pseudos, right? And actually, I just shared something the other day. There is research coming out that two doctors, Dr. Palatinaman and Dr. Nathan Hall, have found some way to, they got a mimic of C4 that operational bomb dogs are hitting under blind testing, which means that's a good progress. And mimics and pseudos have been around probably the second longest besides real. So we had to go look at, okay, number one, why do pseudos or mimics exist? And in most cases, it exists because you can't get your hands on the real substance, whatever it is. But most times it's explosives or narcotics. And in many cases, you need to have limicensing to be able to have those. So that becomes a hurdle for the average person who wants to go train on those things. Well, in lieu of that came synthetics, pseudos or mimics. So they came up with a version that was what the scientist felt was closely resembling this. And some scientists did some extensive testing. Some scientists did whatever testing they did. The issue kind of came into play where the argument became stronger within the industry, which was you had independent tests being done on these pseudos or mimics, and you had varying results of this. And as the government shared those varying results, you'd have camps that would start going up. So a lot of people know me in this world is because I started off my career being heavily in favor of pseudos and mimics until I got around some of the doctors I mentioned who said, okay, if you believe this, let's do some testing. And when we did some fair testing, I saw some limitations, but the limitation wasn't solely to the, like I was saying, to the mimic. I had some limitations on real, but what I knew was what was in real did match better to what I was looking for operationally than the mimic did. The mimic usually, just like the absorption, came along with some other things that I needed to pay attention to. And what happens is mimics aren't bad. And because I have to have honesty in this, because I'd go out there and when I was first learning the pros and cons, I became heavy of let's not mess with the pseudos or mimics because of the problems that have already been observed. But the industry has a strong argument where they'll say, hey, I'm Bill. I've trained on synthetic. And when I went to real, my dog found it no problem. And I'm like, okay, cool. However, did you do it this way? Did you train your dog on the mimic? And if you trained on the mimic, then did you introduce real in a blind lineup to see, did the dog truly make the connection that the mimic equaled the real under blind conditions? Meaning the example was to say, I had 3 rows of 5 paint cans. So row number 1 has the mimic in it, along with in that row some other non-target things. Row number 2, maybe it's a blank row. Maybe there's only distracting and proofing items in that row. There's just like rubber gloves, plastic bags, just random crap. Row number 3 may have the real substance in there along with other items that are either blank or have distractors in it. But as a handler, I don't know. So if I believed that my dog took the mimic and could generalize to the real, my dog should hit the mimic in row 1, hit the target or real substance on row 3. Maybe it falses or not on row, but as long as it doesn't show me something, if it falses, I need to know why. What did it false to, right? So, but everybody, including myself, when we trained on the mimics, we did not test it in that way. What we all did, or many of us did, there might be somebody might pop on and go, oh, I did it that way. Okay, cool. But what most of us did was we trained on the pseudo. We then went to, somebody showed up today with the real stuff. We put the real stuff in a filing cabinet drawer or a desk drawer or wherever. And when our dog walked into that room and went, ooh, there's something different here, we went, oh, see, they know it. But then what I learned was dogs will do that when you put something into an environment that doesn't belong. So I could go grab a little plastic baggie full of baby powder and put that in the space and watch a lot of dogs acknowledge it. But the problem is the minute the dogs acknowledge it, the handlers do what they do to confirm for the dog. And what we did in most cases is we said we trained on the mimic. Then we had our opportunity to have real, and the real was in the environment a lot like the mimic was. And the dog's paying attention to something novel. It doesn't belong there. It's concealed in a similar way as the training aids before were concealed, maybe even packaged in a very similar way. Oh, it also happens to have the same trainer scent in the area. My trainer is still here. So then that does it. And the first time another dog goes over it, say another dog searched before I did, that dog put off whatever we call it, like the happy hormone or the whatever thing that's telling them that the next dog comes in and goes, oh, this is relevant. And odor happens to be at the very end of that list. There's a lot of other little things that the dogs will use as inferences to help solve the problem. But if you do the blind lineups, you're able to reduce a lot of those cues, because now it's all the same paint cans. They're all in a row. The handler has no clue. It's just silver paint cans, so you don't know anything. They're either just numbered, so all you can do is call out a number. Where in the environment, it's that one filing cabinet in that room. There's no other filing cabinet in the room itself, and it's the only thing novel in that space. Now, hopefully, maybe somebody might put something else novel out as well that's non-target. But again, rarely does that happen, and rarely will it be in the same, say, strong chemical profile where the dog will go, I'm interested in this, but it's not what I'm looking for. Move on, right? So so what I say to people is mimics and pseudos have a definite use. And some of the best usage of it is it helps your dog learn detection. It's learning a substance. And in most cases, those synthetics that are out there, you're not going to find them in the real world environment. Most cases, unless there's another dog person that's traveling with a pseudo with them, would have your dog hit it, you know? So the way I kind of share it these days is like, use what you can get your hands on that teach the dog how to be a good detection dog with the right habits. And if you don't have real, train on whatever mimic is supposed to be matching the world you're in. And then the first opportunities that you have to train on the real substance, train on the real substance as frequently as you can. Just like when training on the real substance, I still have to have the same thing happen. I still have to have that handler train on somebody else's real substance as soon as possible, because I can be just as problematic because my dog got so rigid about that particular real odor and whatever purity, impurity, whatever's with it. Both ends of that spectrum need generalization. You need to show the dog more pictures so it gets better at it. Just pick something that has the least amount of fallout. That's the kind of message I share these days. All three options have pros and cons. None of them are perfect. The only thing I can say is, but yes, training on the real substance should operationally match what you're looking for more authenticity wise than maybe an absorption aid or a mimic aid. They will have something that you do have to consider about doing it. Now, the easy answer to kind of say to most people is, okay, if you could get your hands on the real substance and I put the option in front of you, you can either have the real substance of X or the mimic of X. You're allowed to have both. What would you choose to start with? Almost every option, if you could get your hands on the real, everybody's going to pick the real. Yeah. The mimic or pseudo exists for two reasons: accessibility and or safety. Yeah. And that's relevant. That's an important part. But what happens is we get wrapped up in these arguments, me included, where we started trying to go, it's either this or that, and you're wrong if you do this. You know, we can't camp up all the time on every topic. We have to look at it objectively. And I've been better over the past few years of saying, hey, look, you know, because I went from one spectrum to the other spectrum, I can now land in the middle much better because I've seen pros and cons to both sides of it. And I've made my own experiences and errors on both sides of those equations.
What about discrimination? Like, and teaching dogs multiple orders? Where does that come into play?
So the sooner you show discrimination, generally the better. And the reason is the same reason I said earlier. The more I keep showing them they finding this thing, they think, let's just say I'm doing a 4-box lineup. That's an easy visual for most people. If I have one box, which is called the hot box, that's the substance where that's the box that always lives in, the dog will get really good at going, yep, this box is hot. And you might, most people these days will start off, especially if they're using some of the devices that launch a toy out, they'll put a toy in the other boxes, which is fine. That's great. But that goes back to that same argument I said earlier. Does your dog know toy by itself is no good, but the box with toy plus odor is good?
Or electronics too. What do they?
Depending, exactly. Now, I know a number of teams that will have their blank boxes contain many of the same electronics just because of the point you mentioned. But in addition to that too, the thing that they have to be careful of is just make sure that you're also sometimes surprising the dog by putting the target substance by itself with no toy. Just again, to make sure that we're giving the dog the picture that based on repetition history, this is where people forget. The more reps I do of that sequence, the odor plus the toy, the stronger that picture of odor plus toy exists. So to your point of discrimination, if I'm always showing the dog odor in this configuration without changing the other things in other boxes, putting other smells in there, not just having the same ones all the time, because the dog will go, got it. Box number 1 has a tennis ball in it. Box number 2 has rubber gloves in it. Box number 3. And then that becomes predictable to the dog that odor is present. So for me, as soon as I teach an odor, the dog understands odor, I quickly move to discrimination. In each session and sometimes each day, I'm going to change what that identification thing I'm using is going to be. So some days a rubber glove, next day it could be a plastic bag, next day it's going to be something else, or in the same lineup I have those things. But what I have to do is each day change it out again, because again the dog will start becoming predicted to. That was a downside to the wheel, because what happens in the wheel, if you just spin your wheel around, the sequence is still the same: shoe leather, toothpaste, target odor. Shoe leather, so the dog goes, got it, smell the shoe leather, smell the toothpaste, target odor. And we keep moving it. We may spin the wheel around, but we're not changing the things in the sequence. So a thing that Dr. Hall shares is you have to walk up, move all the cans around in the wheel, and then do it again. And then that way it changes the order, because some dogs with high memory remember the sequence.
That's crazy. We got a question here that just showed up.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions, you guys share this too. I don't know why the numbers are a little bit low today, but the vast majority of people watch this after the fact anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So question, do you recommend using pure form like birch to teach to track like AKC scent work? And if so, use birch scent and mix it with another scent in the same article? I'm just thinking about people smuggling drugs over the packing. Spray it with another scent to disguise, I would assume, the original scent with another scent. How many dogs do you think can do this job? Explosive scent covered with lemon juice and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. So, well, the good thing is, to answer the last part of the question first, is we have dogs every day finding, let's say, narcotics being concealed in ways that the viewer there shared. They'll come up. I mean, it's ingenious all the ways they try to smuggle the narcotics through. And the thing that's usually in the dog's favor is the longer it's been confounded with the other non-target things that are trying to mask it, the more that chemical leaks out. Now, if I take something right now, let's say I take the drug and I wrap it with cellophane, and then I wrap it with mustard over that cellophane, then I wrap another layer of motor oil over that, and I put it out right now, the dog probably won't smell it. There's no chance for that odor, the target odor, to seep out. The only way it could seep out if I'm grubby and I touch the substance and then I touched all the layers, I might have some contamination or transfer there. But what happens is the longer that something is confounded with something, that target substance will get out. Now, here's the thing. I can't always expect that first time operation, the dog will nail it. I have to show what I should do in training is show my dog that picture. So I share this all the time with the police officers I train with. I say, okay, give me your training aid. We're going to wrap it in cellophane. And then after we do 2 layers or 3 layers of cellophane, we're going to put some mustard on that outer layer. Then we're going to wrap it a few more times. Then we're going to take some peanut butter. We're going to wrap it over that. And then we're going to let it set overnight. So that way it matches like mail. It's being shipped from one location to the other location. So 24-hour mail kind of thing. Well, now the next morning, what we want to do is we're going to put it in the lineup. We'll put these other things by themselves, so the mustard by itself and the peanut butter by itself, the cellophane by itself, and then the target substance one. And we will see how the dog does. Does the dog pick it up? Does the dog not pick it up? If the dog doesn't pick it up, well, then we can kind of tell that the dog doesn't understand that picture. So we have to peel it back a layer or two. Maybe let's just do the layer this time with the mustard only and see when the dog pick it up. Now, going to the first part of that question of training on pure, I can tell you there's no pure. At some point, especially at handler or trainer level, we've mucked it up in some way. Even though it came to us and whatever, it's going to get contaminated in one form or fashion. How you store it, how you carried it, whatever. Unless you're going to be in a scientific laboratory, wear a full suit, head thing on, because if you can go, it's pure, and you're walking around like this and you have rubber gloves on, you're still breathing over it. There's still the environment. There's still things are going to happen. Here's the greatest part. Dogs can be smart enough to figure out after some exposure and reinforcement history what they should be paying attention to. This is the hardest part about detection, is us peeling back those layers of the onions to make sure that the dog is paying attention to the thing that we want it to versus assuming it is. And this is where testing comes into play to help give us better data and to understand what the outcomes are. Is the dog truly accurate at detecting this? under these different circumstances? Is it or is it only good at detecting it under these conditions, which are maybe simpler or more dumbed down in the sense that it's only the target substance within whatever container or vessel it's kept in? So you just have to be smart about showing the dog all these variables so that way it can start to understand if that chemical is present under any of these variable conditions, tell me. And if it's not, also tell me by not showing me anything. And to answer your question earlier about the variables, I introduced those variables earlier because the sooner I introduce variables, the dog becomes more flexible. If I wait too long before I show variables, the dog will think, due to reinforcement history, it's always like this.
Yes.
So the sooner, so I show variables earlier. I show the discrimination. I do generalization and discrimination really early on to include 0 runs, meaning there's going to be runs in those sequences where no odor is present, and the dog will be reinforced for the right answer. It's reinforced if it finds target odor, and there's a level of reinforcement I can use when they do the correct answer of nothing is here. Because if you only show them the right answer to get reinforcement is always finding something, when the absence of the stimulus is there, you will probably have, and again, there's numbers to this that people will test, but there's in testing cases, your probability of a false response increases for 2 reasons. 1, the longer the handler's there, and 2, the dog feels the only way to solve the problem is to pick something. So in lieu of no target odor there, you will have some dogs will go, well, I don't smell, but this thing here is the smelliest. And you'll have some dogs do that. So the sooner that you show them that 0 is a possibility and the correct answer of nothing is here, meaning there's no response, can have some type of reinforcement history to it, levels out the dog's need to say, I can't find anything, so I'm going to pick this. I'm not even going into the factor of handler behavior because there's a whole bunch of handler stuff that goes into play that may also cause these false responses. But if we're just going on the understanding that they find something, they get paid, but the right answer, even in the absence of odor, no stimulus is present, and the dog shows no stimulus present, the user has the option to reinforce that correct answer if they choose. And those that have chosen to do that tend to have a much lower false response history.
Well, it just goes to show the importance of being a blind handler too, man.
Yes.
Because I can see that there's so many tells that a handler can do, even if they're trying consciously to not, there's
we still do. We all do. People call me out. I'll do random things too. I teach the stuff and I try not to do it, but there's times where, like, I share the easiest one. The easiest one is you look towards where you know the answer is. So your dog will search the direction of where you face the best versus searching the space behind you. So I'll do an experiment from time to time where I have the handlers search, like, and they're in a room facing a certain wall with a bunch of, furniture and what have you. So they'll search a lot of that space there. And as they search that space, the odor is actually behind the handler on the wall over here. Few dogs, and we'll make it stinky. We'll make it purposely stronger to see if will the dog go behind the handler and say it's over here and not only search the area the handler is facing. And for a lot of dogs, that's harder than it seems to be, right? So handlers will face one wall. We'll have some dogs that will run to the wall behind them really quickly and then see the handler's not looking and then run back and keep searching the wall over here, even though they went to the answer over here. So we have to be very aware of our subconscious cueing. And the first easiest one is we typically sit and stare towards where we believe something is at. Nothing wrong with that per se, but you do need to level out the playing field with your behavior that sometimes we need to be able to reinforce when we're not paying attention. And the dog gets reinforced for making the correct decision of going, well, what I'm looking for is over here. I know my dumb handler isn't facing that way, but I'm going towards where the stimulus is if it is present there. And that's important. It's hard to do.
So when we do have an area that is zero odor, is absence odor, how do we keep stamina in that dog? How do
you build it. So here's what typically happens, right? So the typical training cycle is every time I'm training, I'm finding odor, I'm finding odor, I'm finding odor, I'm finding odor. And you may go, some people may go months of that training cycle. Like if we're doing detection, my dog is finding something. And then they get to the point where they have to do what is going to be, depending on their job that they do, the realistic aspect of we don't find something. But here's what happens. And Dr. Stuart Hilliard kind of shared this, and it really struck home for me. The absence of stimulus can be aversive.
Yes.
So if you create a significant history of the dog must get out of the car, get out of the cage, get out of whatever they're at, and immediately go search, and there is a high expectation of find because that's what you've done, the absence of the stimulus within a prescribed period of time, because the dogs will start having internal clocks, because typically they find something in training within X amount of minutes.
Yes.
To your point that you're making, if they haven't found it in X amount of minutes, you're going to see sometimes behavioral changes, meaning more rapid sniffing. Like, gosh, I haven't found it yet. Dang, this thing over here is really stinky. I'm smelling it really hard, but it's not what I'm looking for. But then the handler, who also has a time violation in their head, well, we haven't found something yet, sees their dog smell anything. And then our own egos get involved because we don't want to be wrong. We're afraid to be wrong. So the dog starts smelling something really, really good. We then see the dog leave it, but we don't see anything of interest anywhere else. What are we bound to go do? Let's go back to that one spot again, dog. Let's go check that one more time, because that's the only spot I saw you do something. Well, again, if you're not careful in your training, sometimes that becomes some information the dog may use to go, well, if you like this too, maybe you do want me to respond to it. And a lot of dogs, it takes 2 to 3 times, if not more, for them to commit to it. But the handler gets convinced because it's the only thing the dog has showed that they had some interest in. So to build out that time duration, what I really do and what I share now is I show the dog 0 is a possibility really early on in that simple protocol system, where whether it be the wall, the boxes, the wheels, whatever, 0 is an option, and 0 at my discretion gets reinforced on a variable level, just like I do on real odor. I also, once the dog knows odor, I introduce a variable reinforcement schedule. This just bolsters the dogs. Like, I could get paid, so they get even a lot of dogs. And this is, I'm dealing with dogs that are motivated, but even dogs that are less motivated, like pet dogs, I can still use a variable reinforcement system on them to get them to be more motivated about it, because the hope, as even as Bart says, the hope is powerful. And if I create hope, that reinforcement will happen. I'll get, in most cases, some type of behavior change that is strong enough for me to read that there's something that could be relevant to this. So I have to show the dog that 0 is an answer. I might reinforce. And then as I build duration of time, I do a VRT, variable reinforcement to time, then, or variable time schedules. I forget, I'm messing a few of them up right now, but I'm going to vary the time ratio of how long they have to search before they either end the search or they find something. So this is something new I've shared recently, which is called the end of search queue. So I have a queue that starts the search. So seek, find it, whatever. But I also have one that I can stop the search at any given time I want to. I just say, all done. Where my dog here is all done. They come over to me. Maybe I give them a pat in the side. Maybe I reinforce them. Maybe I just say, let's go to the next area. I'm bookending the search. I have a start and I have a stop. A lot of teams just say seek, or whatever, and then they search. And when the dog can't find the stimulus and there's no communication from the handler, some dogs don't know what to do if there's no feedback. So all I'm doing is trying to become better at communicating. I can stop the search. Maybe there's something I see over here that's could be a problem in the environment, could be a hazard or whatever. I can say, all done. Dog comes back to me. Now handlers can go, oh no, Cameron, no problem. I say recall. I say here, do it. Yep, you can do that too. But I'm picking something like sook or seek that is directly related to communication and detection. So when I say all done for me, so in the sport world, they always use this one. Finish. That is their cue. In nose work and AKC scent work, the typical answer is finish, and that cues the dog that they're done. But it's really there for the judge to know the handler has finished the search. But inadvertently, what they've done, they've created a start and they've created a stop. Both have value in communication. So to build duration, I'll search X period of time. If my dog hasn't found something yet, I can say all done. I can engage in my dog in whatever way is reasonable that makes sense. And then I can stop for X amount of seconds or minutes and then say start again. And I can keep going and build duration that way. So some will do this. They'll throw odor out to keep the dog motivated. But then if you keep throwing odor out, you might start seeing the outcome of the dog going, well, I have to find something. And for certain dogs, I think that is the answer. But for other dogs, that may not be the answer. Having another form of communication can create clarity versus the dog trying to play hot and cold and never knowing when they're hot.
Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. And it also, I mean, the bookend and just like what Bart says, like when we do the indicator of like we're back on, that's that hope coming back alive, right? And so the dog can wind down, kind of get over it, and then I'm thinking about a police officer that I was talking to, and he had a perp that was hiding in these bushes, and the perp actually dropped his gun, and the dog found the gun, and that kind of reignited the dog as well. And so I can see that the scent being there, but it took a very long time to find this perp, and so calling the dog back to you, all done, and even staying in the same area or even walking a little bit to just a different area, but still in the same general area, giving the cue to start again.
Well, let's zoom out to this. Let's take a bomb dog. This is an easy example. I could actually do bomb or human remains as a good example for this. So in training, the bomb dog, they train at this, let's say they have 5 different locations they frequently train, right? This old warehouse, a car lot, another building, whatever. And on training day, the dog is getting 5 or more fines in training. And they're typically at these locations. But then that bomb dog goes to the airport it works at or the casino it works at if it's in Vegas, and they don't ever find anything in those environments.
Right.
And the dog starts learning, okay, under this context is Disneyland. Toys are flying. I'm having a great time. All the dogs in the parking lot are barking. We know it's a training day. Probability of reinforcement is extremely high. Over here where I work, very low potential of fines. So then that environment contextually can become punishing in its own way. Oh, here we are. We're at this place. Nothing happens. Now, good programs do find ways as best they can to create reinforcement in those environments. But the problem is they look nothing like the training environment. So what happens is by accident, we end up creating a training system that has these signals and cues that tell the dog this is going to happen. And then over in this environment, not so much. So depending on the dog, depending on the handler, you start seeing fallout if you can't blend training world and reality world better. And that's a lot of what my seminars are about these days is I go to these agencies, I go to these companies and I say, let's look at it like this. Let's start merging these worlds closer together than having them be so distinctly different. And we can violate these dogs' expectations by maybe going into a training environment that has nothing in it because the dog's expecting it. And you'll see your falses shoot way up because everything is told them about this today should be a fine. And it's the handlers too. It's not even just the dogs. The handlers coming in expect to find something. It's training day. I'm here with 10 other dog teams. Like I said, the parking lot's full of barking dogs from time to time, or a dog gets out, 3 or 4 are barking. They know what's going on the minute they hit the parking lot. And then they go in there and it's a training day. So I expect to find something. So as an instructor, I love violating that expectation. But number 2, what I also do is I turn their training environment to look different. So maybe I show up with a bag of trash, I toss it over a room. I have to clean up later on, but that dog who's walked in that building 50 times already, never experienced it with some brand new trash, or I go to Goodwill and I buy a bunch of clothes and I toss clothes all over the room. All these things, you're gonna see the dogs go, whoa, this is different. And then I figure out where I want to violate the expectation. Do I want to violate that this is the only dog that searches that space? Do I want to violate the expectation there's no find to be found? Do I want to violate that the only thing I put in here is a non-target substance that's really tempting and the handler doesn't know? So there's different things I can do, but then I try to show them, let's just get creative. Let's just walk into your normal world. Let's leave this training area. Let's walk over here and go to another area. How can you turn this in some way or another into a training lesson so that the dog starts realizing there's hope to finding something over here where they almost never find something. And what they're finding isn't their normal training aid. How can I be creative? If they do find stimulus in the space, what can I do to make it more match what I'm actually looking for? So this is where like, I'll give you the example of that. So what I did for some bomb dogs was I put the explosive odor into a water bottle, the metal water bottles. I've instantly created a pipe bomb by doing that. If I want to go full in depth, right?
Right.
Instead of using a pipe, I just used a water bottle. And then that blends into the environment. And I can carry that with me. I can move it around. I can do some great stuff in their normal environment that will blend in, that looks operational as well. And maybe I tell the teams we're doing this. Maybe I don't tell the teams we're doing this. And we come into their operational environment. I get it. There's going to be some teams that are like, hey, Cameron, I would love to be able to do that, but there's no way in hell they're going to ever let me walk into this environment with that substance. So then this is where those soaks come into play, or the mimics come into play. I can still create hope by them finding these targets, whether how close they match can be debated. But if I can still show the dog, do the job, and you will probably find a stimulus that you are trained to respond to and reinforce them that way and vary that up. It just requires being creative and looking at your spaces in different ways than you typically do, and not getting into the rut that it's Thursday night training, therefore we go do this all the time. And we check the box, we put this odor out, that odor out, that odor out, and so forth, and look at it. How can I blend these two worlds together as best I can with the limitations that I'm stuck with the agency or company I work with?
And is there a timetable that is preferable to you that you kind of check in and do that? Or is it, I mean,
it needs to match what your operational tempo is. So as far as these timetables of what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, should, when I finish whatever school I'm doing, be at least matching what I'm expected to go do for real at a decent level. Maybe not the hardest level, but I would say moderate to easy operational should already be experienced in the training world before you graduate. But if not, if it's the typical, hey, I got my dog, I went through a 2-week school or a 6-week school, and now I'm out here and I'm trying to go do this, your goal would be to try to mimic what your operational environment tempo looks like. And if your tempo, if you're a bomb dog handler or an HR handler where your ratio to fine is very low, if almost never, I have to show that dog that in training too. I have to show them that sometimes training is going to be, we're searching our ass off even in known areas and we find nothing. Because again, if I keep making that distinction very strong, that training looks like a lot of fun and over here kind of sucks because I don't ever get to find anything, I'm going to have some type of fallout in some way. And this depends on handler, depends on dog. So I can't say it's always going to be this because it's going to vary depending on the human and the dog. But there will be fallout if you don't find a way to merge those two worlds better together.
Yeah. Well, and I can see how that can be viewed as an aversive. Now, with HRD, I mean, you're typically working, I mean, SAR, or is that it? Or is it also like for, I mean, in a city environment, how does that work? And how do you do that with the HRD dogs?
The human remains world is got its own specialties within it, I would say. There is what I call recovery, which is, let's say the person got lost out in the woods, or whether it be autism, whether it be Alzheimer's, whether it just be a lost hiker, that kind of falls under the recovery, meaning the person has unfortunately expired in some of these environments, whatever they are, and we need to recover them. So they're not going to be probably hidden all that well. But then there's the HRD side, which is the crime scene side, which means you were there because a law enforcement agency believes some type of homicide has occurred and the decedent is attempted to be, hidden in some way or another, concealed somehow. So they're going to look for the dog to be used in a different kind of way, even though the target substance decomposition, human decomp, is going to be potentially is the target, regardless of whether recovery or crime scene. That recovery is based on human remains. How that human remains is encountered is very differently, potentially. The crime scene, again, version is, what if somebody, put somebody through the wood chipper and then paved over that area where they buried them? There's been all kind. I mean, look at John Wayne Gacy, had all the dead bodies had a lot of dead bodies in the basement of his house. So there's one version which you're going to face an adversarial aspect, meaning somebody does not want to get caught, so they're trying to hide the target. The other one is just a series of unfortunate accidents, and we just don't know where the decedent is located, and we're using the dogs in that way. So there's going to be different search strategies in either of those. There'll be similarities, but there's also going to be some differences in how you might deploy the dog depending on the other. And if you go to Europe, you see these very distinct differences. You see dogs that they use for crime scenes utilized in a very way that matches that world. Then you have the dogs under their Red Cross kind of system that are used to locate recovery. So they'll be walking around with bells on, searching big fields, really far off leash, lots of freedom, where that dog is going to be used in a criminal aspect, has different procedural things they're doing. Maybe their handler's wearing a Kyvex suit so they don't contaminate the area. There's a lot of different things that are going to happen. So you just have to train in the way that's going to match like you're going to do. And just because a dog has a certificate that says you're certified human remains does not mean it's going to be a great crime scene dog. And it may not mean it's a great recovery dog if it hasn't had enough exposure of one or the other. We just can't make the assumption at the end of the day.
Well, and it's also here in I'm in Snohomish County, where SAR was formed to the modern day, and we just had this mudslide a few years ago up in Oso, where they brought the FEMA dogs in. But when I've talked to SAR handlers, search and rescue, there's also a factor of they were out looking for a recovery, and they came upon a different suicide. So somebody went out there, and it wasn't who they were looking for, and they found another decedent, and they kind of had to keep it hush hush. So the family so they can identify who this was, but they definitely knew it wasn't the kid that they were looking for. And I was like, that's fascinating. And I'm also looking at, there's a book of a lost person behavior, right? Where and it's just a breakdown, just like you said, the data points that we're looking for of like out of 100 autistic kids that got lost, 80 of them went this way or went and sought a lake, and then looking at the landscape. And looking at the ridges of the mountains or the hills that you're in, the wind patterns.
So what you're highlighting is something that so many handlers do, and it gets them wrapped up around those details, and they stop doing the most important detail, which is reading their dog. Because what happens is, like, a lot of things, and I used to share a lot of those things too. I'd be like, hey, understand this, understand that. Then what I started witnessing was handlers would start thinking about those things while they're working their dog, and it took focus off the dog versus saying, hey, here's your area. I'm giving you from this point to this point, that point to that point. There's your square. Okay. Search that area. Let me know if you got anything in there. And when you do that to them and you give them no other info, all they can do is go, where's my boundary points? And they walk and they work their dogs. People who have gone into, okay, the wind's going this way, temperature is this, they'll get so in the minutia that the minutia a lot of times interferes. What I like about those details, though, what I tell handlers is, don't worry about those as you start your search. If you get too much into thinking about what ifs, you're probably going to do something that interferes with good search work, like reading your dog. So just go work and read your dog. Now, if your dog indicates, now take in what's going on. Where is the wind coming from? Because now is the point the dog's alerting to. Could it possibly, or would it be reasonable that maybe it's 6 feet away from that due to the wind? So when you tell somebody my dog alerted here, you can also say it may not be exactly where the dog alerted to. You have to think based on the current wind conditions and the temperature. I would think the possibility that's reasonable could be within 8 feet this direction with over here, knowing there's some wood line, whatever. Then you can start going your variables based on the indication. A lot of times when you start getting too much out in front of all that, it turns into, well, did we create a bias into our head that we probably could have avoided if we just didn't go down that rabbit hole? And that's, again, something that's easier said than done. I have been there so many times myself where, I do it from time to time, even when I'm training with friends. I'm like, I'm a trainer. I would probably hide it like this, or I might do this. And if my dog does something, I start dissecting it. Well, if the wind's doing that, and I got stop. Did your dog do X, Y, or Z? Did it not? And well, it didn't. Okay, move on. And more times I do that, we're more right than wrong, because the minute I'm not, and this is a saying I share all the time, it's not your job to convince the dog there's odor there. It's the dog's job to convince you. But so often we see the slightest little thing and we start trying to convince the dog and ourselves this is where something's at, versus it being the other way around. Like, nope, I don't believe you. You better convince me that this is something there. And that's a hard thing to get over.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you ever do man trailing? And do you ever have somebody just run off and hide and then have the dog?
Years ago, because as a cop, that was one of the main jobs, is whatever the term would be, tracking, trailing, etc. And that varies on whatever you're at. A fun story I've shared a few times, so people might have heard this one before, but basically trying to condense the story. Me and my good friend, we had worked German Shepherds for a long time. Well, the agency that we worked at got some Malinois, and we had always heard Malinois don't track. And this was the early 2000s. So there was still a little bit of disconnect between the breeds and this rivalry between Shepherds and Malinois. So anyway, we were in the mindset of Malinois don't track. So we asked the Dutch guys how they were doing it. So my one friend, he's a Tennessee country boy. This is the way he kind of trusted animals. He was like, I'm going to do what's best for the dog based on what I see the dog wants to do naturally. I followed what Bob Gailey had taught me, which was more of like a Schütze style track, which is like footstep, get really accurate with it, that kind of thing. So we had our new dogs. He trained his way. I trained my way. And it kind of came to a head one day. We were debating over the word tracking and trailing. And he goes, I don't give a crap what you call it. I call it manhunting. And if someone's in my area, my job is to find them one way or the other. I don't care how we get there. And I was like, oh, this, that, and the other. So he says, fine, you go off and hide, but we're going to set it up like a perimeter. We got perimeter set up. You can't get outside the perimeter, but you're in here somewhere. I don't care where you go. Just go set up. And it was pretty decent. So he sets up his thing. I set up, I lay this elaborate track. I'm going around these businesses. I jump a wall. This business had a koi pond. I go over a bridge. I do all this kind of stuff. And I end up in a little wooded area. And so it always dates and I always tell a story. I had next told him, I was like, beep, beep, hey, I'm in my spot. And so I see him start a little bit later on. I see him go off the way I started. X amount of minutes later, let's just call it 20, 30 minutes later, he comes to the wood line over here on my right. And I was like, that's not how I came. So he comes up and he's like, got you, bitch. And I was like, you missed my whole track. I was over. He's like, I don't give a crap. I was looking for you. My job is to put you in jail if you're running from us. And then that humbled me immediately and I said, well, what about the article I left over here? He goes, fine. My number one job is to catch you. Now, if I have to go find evidence, then I'll deploy my dog later on in an area to look for articles. Or I just talk to you and then hopefully maybe you give me some information that I can use to deduce whether or not there's more things that could be found. But my number one priority is to find you, whether you're a lost person or a criminal evading arrest. My dog, my job is to find you. And he goes, who am I to tell the dog what's the better way to go about doing it? Now, can I construct some training that gives them to work on those skills? Absolutely. But like he said, whether it's head up, head down, I can give two shits. His job is to tell me where you're at. And I'm not going to force him to do one or the other. I'm going to let him do what he does naturally, because he brought up a very good point. He goes, because what do we do for real? We do all this tracking training, and then we get our first call, we get out of the patrol car, and we hold that leash and go, don't fuck me now, let's go. Because I don't know. So you end up having to trust what that dog's telling you and work through it on your real operational calls. And the busier a department is, they get more opportunities to do that. The dog learns through sometimes the easy captures. They only had to go 100 yards and the person was right there, or the wind was blowing right in their face perfectly. And the dogs with more calls for service start figuring that stuff out despite some of the training they go through. Other dogs or other handlers who may have learned through experience train their next dog slightly different than they did their last dog. At the end of the day, I think sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves on definitions versus looking at it from a dog's perspective and what could be best for the dog to accomplish whatever that job is. So in recent history, I haven't done that kind of tracking trailing work in ages. The last time we even played with it a little bit was with the SEAL teams. We tested a few ideas out, but that's not really their mission set. They don't really go looking for somebody off of a target. That's somebody else's job. But we tested a few things just to see practicality, because under the multi-purpose canine definition, certain special forces programs do have some tracking dogs. At least during the wars, they did a little bit. But in any case, that would be the last time I did that. So it's been probably a decade or more since I've done tracking trailing stuff.
And I think it just illustrates the point that you made earlier about SAR coming in there thinking that you know better than a dog, instead of letting this dog's God-given gift go to work and accomplish the job that is in front of them. Yep. Do SEAL dogs, what is their primarily objective?
It's a detection tool. So like when I first got there, it was quasi still really heavy towards the bite work side of things, the apprehension aspect. There was a shift that started happening where they realized, hey, these guys are SEAL team guys. They can neutralize a target if they had to. So the dog being primarily focused on a lot of bite work training was not to its best advantage, where detecting explosives is what was going to save other SEAL team members' lives.
Yep.
So during my time there, we had a shift in the type of dogs that we picked, and the focus of training became heavier towards detection, with still plenty of apprehension and bite involved. Like anything else, certain dogs are going to like that side better than another. Certain dogs are going to definitely, just gravitate towards liking bite work, or the cues that might tell them a bite might happen next, would get in the way. So our goal was to work heavily towards detection with the component of apprehension. And we got, through selection testing, better dogs that were able to switch back and forth with less fallout. They could go from focusing on detection heavily and go apprehend somebody without a problem. Other dogs, we had to kind of just steer them into, hey, at least tell me the explosives here before you go chase or want to go bite. So there was some cool stuff we got to play with. And there was videos years ago that we used to share, and Justin Rigney would share them too, where the dog would do detection led to apprehension. And you can start to increase value. You're just pre-macking detection to potential value of an apprehension. And again, with anything else, you had to be careful with what type of dog you did that with and how often you did that with. But it was the premise that could show them that detection has a lot of value, even though there's also potential for an apprehension or using your mouth to go engage on something.
Awesome, bro. I haven't even looked at my questions that I asked for you. So let me run through some of these questions, and then we've been chatting for a while. You got me going, man. You do seminars. Are you using the school? How, like, if people are watching this and they want to learn from you directly, myself included, how do we do that?
So FordK9.com is where I have a lot of online materials. There's 60 to 70 webinars in there, not just from me, but from me and other subject matter experts within this career field. Then there's some online classes. I have our whole How We Train Dogs on Odor on there, step 0 through right now. Step 0, 1, and 2 are on there. Step 3 will come out soon enough. But step 3 is more when you're already out there searching. So all of that is under the online training. Yeah, you go there, and you'll see we have lectures. We have lectures from me and from other instructors. There's also the online classes. That's the Odor Pays stuff. So the membership is where people get a lot of value, because right now what I do, they pay $35 a month. They get one webinar for free. And then I have a private Facebook group where I share videos every week. And right now we got a whole series where I'm taking Rich Hartman. He's got a giant schnauzer that's a year old that he wanted to train in explosive work. So we're sharing the entire process, from how we looked at the dog, could the dog do the job, to last week where we started doing the imprinting of odor. And then we'll start doing what we talked about. I'll start doing some discrimination, some generalization, and so on and so forth. So that's within the membership stuff. Then my in-person stuff is under the training tab, and under the training tab is where you can do how to host me. You can click on that. It'll be like host Ford K9 for a seminar, or you can see any online classes we have. Any classes we have in person coming up. We have an advanced handler class coming up in a couple of weeks. That'll be in Santa Rosa. And then the rest of it is me traveling around doing seminars all over. So I travel, like in a week, I go to Austin PD. I train with Austin PD's bomb squad and their bomb dogs. Next month, I go to Reno for a K9 conference. Then after that, I go to New York City to the New York MTA. So it's seminars where I come to you. It's our classes in person, which are not as frequent as they used to be because of the travel. And then all the online resources where you can get I'm telling you, you can get all the cognition stuff online. As you probably saw there, if you went on the online learning, you'll see K9 cognition. We have our cognition classes online now. We have the training odor online now, and then a lot of lectures from some great individuals who are, there you go. There's the Odor Pay series. Each one is like the step 0 has 17 hours of Michael Ellis talking about communication, reward sequences, how to reward, outing, all kinds of stuff towards reward. And then step 1 is we go into odor. And then there's even some stuff there with Forrest on contact healing. So
very cool, man. I mean, it looks like a very rich resource. Now, selecting the right dog too. Like that's
Yep.
what I would be interested in the future. Like I have right now, I have 7 dogs. I'll never have this many dogs ever
Yep.
again in my life. I messed up during COVID. But then my next, I want to really get into the scent work and then do you also do like allergy, like peanut allergies or any of that stuff?
No, I've stayed out of that medical
Okay.
detection dog world just because there's some significant nuances in what we train those dogs or how you train those dogs. Obviously, in many cases, the context that they're looking at is the human
Mhm.
and versus the open air environment. So a lot of what I do or my specialty is much more the open air environment. So I always defer. Do people do reach out to me for diabetic alerts? People reached out to me for gluten. Some people reached out for other things, and I usually recommend them to go reach out to another place called Medical Mutts. And
Medical mutt.
Dr. Jennifer Kate, she specializes in a lot of that medical detection type of world, and I send them that way because, again, there's just because people go, "Well, is an odor?" I've had actually there was a recent conversation. Is an odor? And I was like, okay, in a very layman term, sure, but
Right.
there's some significant context things that are relative to medical that are very different than what the world I come from does detection as. So I, like I said, I could have just taken your money and said, yeah, I'd go take these videos and you can do it. But I told the person, I said, look, I'm going to save you money. Go talk to this person. You know, I'm not your person for your medical stuff. Could I do some stuff? Yeah, but I don't want to sell somebody short on something that they, especially medical, where it's
Life
pretty
and death.
critical. I
Yeah.
want them to go learn from people who actually do that type of work specifically.
Well, there's a whole service dog component to this as well,
Yes.
and I do service dogs, and when I do service dogs, I have to, 1, qualify my clients, right, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that
Mm-hmm.
they know what this entails, how
Yep.
commands can, how we deal with commands when they start to deteriorate, and they will.
Yep. Yep.
And whenever I do my integration process, I'm like, we are focusing on things when they go wrong because
Mm-hmm.
that is part of life and they're gonna go
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And I need to show you what to do when they go wrong. Also indicating to the client this isn't a cure.
Yep.
This is something that will absolutely enhance your life, but there is a time span that we have to realize that this dog is going to be capable of doing these tasks. There are
Mm-hmm.
things that can happen in the real world that can detriment this dog's job
Mm-hmm.
and can
Mm-hmm.
cause serious, in fact, retirement issues if this dog gets attacked or where we have to be proactive and have to be an advocate for our service dog, especially when there's service dogs out there that aren't really service dogs. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many factors before we even start working.
Yeah. Oh
On the
yeah.
person side, being a service dog handler, and then also with like agoraphobics or people that are afraid, and the dog gives them confidence. I have to let them know, look, having a dog in a space is going to bring much more attention to you. So there's that fact. There's so many things to
Yeah.
consider. So
Tons.
I'm gonna talk to her. I've
Yeah.
written out all these people that I'm trying to get. I want to get a hold of Brian Hare. I want to
Yeah.
get a hold of what was the gal's name at Medical Muds? Dr.
Dr. Jennifer Kate. So it's Catett.
Catett. And then who was the doctors with the scent?
Oh,
Uh,
so Dr. Paula Tiedemann.
Paul
Paula.
Tiedemann.
Yep. And then Dr. Nathan Hall. They both work at Texas Tech University. And
Oh,
Nathan's the K9 Olfaction Laboratory, and Dr. Tiedemann is head of the forensics laboratory.
oh, fantastic. Okay, got them all
Yeah.
written down.
So Paolo's the one that'll tell you what your chemical is made of or what your substance is made of and what it's smelling like. And Nathan is the one that takes the dogs and then tests those theories out. Like, okay, machine says it's these chemicals, but does the dog smell it that same way? So he's done, there's an enormous amount of research that those two have contributed along with some other ones. There's Dr. Lauren DeGrief. She's probably one of the bigger ones out there right now, going around doing a lot of really fun interactive classes where she has like these cups that you cannot see in them. You don't know what's in them and you have to smell and tell her what you think that one is. So there's some really cool things that she shows you from a human standpoint. And she's at Florida International University. So
Cool.
FIU. So yeah. So those are some of your big ones. There's a lot more. There's Lucia Lazarowski over at Auburn. I could run you down long lists of
Well, I'll get
of
back
people,
to you,
but
man.
those will also lead to the same people. So even if I send you to one of them, they'll send you to the other ones too.
What's so crazy is that I've started doing these podcasts 10 years ago, And I tell people like, this is, I mean, when people watch this and give me feedback, and that I love that, but it's mostly selfishly for me, so I
Sure.
can learn
Learn. Yeah. What do
and
they pick up on?
yeah, this has been exceptional, Cameron. I'm so glad that you took the time with me today. But highest performing canine teams in the world you've worked with, what do those elite handlers consistently do different?
They just work their dog. They don't overcomplicate the process. And even though the process itself has complexities to it, they focus on the most important thing, which is reading their dog and giving the dog the opportunity to do whatever the job is. And that's like every big program that I see, they finally just learn to step out of the dog's way, let the dog do it, and become a really good interpreter of what the dog is telling you. Now, that skill set that makes them better is they stopped doing the typical types of training that I share with, like I talked about at the beginning, where it's like what I call the more routine style of training. They're putting odor out and just doing it to check the box. Those individuals are training to push themselves. They're constantly kind of putting themselves in like a scenario-based training. They're not afraid of double blind type work it's not, double blind is more of a test than it is training, but it has a lot of good training outcomes from it. So it gets kind of put into both, but they put themselves in the scenario, double blind, and plenty of testing when there's no odor present or no target present. And they've learned how to navigate that. That's honestly the hardest thing for most handlers, is to walk out of an area and tell you, no, there's nothing here. They want to have a fail safe of a maybe in case they were wrong. But the more you put yourself under that pressure test type system, the more confidence you have. And then the more confidence you have, the better you and your dog work together. That's where the thing is, when we stay, I think the biggest error that most make is they keep it too easy for way too long. And they haven't experienced enough pressure tests yet to kind of get over a hump of that trust and comfortability of saying yes or no if something's there or not.
That's why you do the discrimination sooner. That's why you do the false
These are all lessons
response.
I've learned it's very, training is very rut oriented, right? We know we should do it this many times. The number one question I get all the time is, how many reps should I do that for? How much odor should I do this for? Or how long should this go for? And the answer is, be consistently inconsistent. Of course, there's certain things that I need to do in the beginning that have value, but I need to, depending on the dog's job, again, make these variables in many cases way sooner than I thought. It's hard to take off the training wheels to ride the bike, but as soon as you get balance, start taking those training wheels off. You're going to fall down sometimes, but the more you do that, those failures teach you way more than all those wins that you get. And that's the hard part, is again, our ego, our dog. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want my dog to suffer because I'm an idiot, kind of thing. And I tell handlers, don't worry about it. Your dog is resilient, because look at all the mistakes you've made before you got to here. So believe me, your dog will make through it. Your goal is to not make the same mistakes over again where it becomes a problem. That's where that fear steps in. Well, if you do this, this will probably happen. There's truth to that if you do it too many times. But if it only happens once or twice, or occasionally it happens, that just tells you, hey, you've got a gap you need to address and fix. Now come up with whatever your corrective action is and address it, and then move on from it. As what is it? Ted Lasso says, be a goldfish. Have that 10-second memory, move on from it.
That's right. Drop it. I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of egos in the dog world and in the police world. So I imagine
I'm shocked by that.
This kind of goes on to that, what you were just talking about. You've said handlers need to know their dog, not just trust their dog. What does that really mean?
That means know the nuances. Know, and I share this, is what is predictable, repeatable, reliable in your dog. That whether that's the indication, because everybody likes to focus on a really pretty indication. But that, as Steve White said, is the period at the end of the sentence. You need to know what that whole sentence was before the period. What were the things the dog did when it encountered odor? How do you know that that's odor versus something of interest? The more you put yourself through those situations, the better you get at what another friend of mine said, Matt Devaney out of the Border Patrol said, we start splitting hairs with a dog's nose. And we start going, well, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? So, but the more you put yourself into those situations where you have to read the dog and make the call, and sometimes you're going to be wrong, and then other times you're going to be right. The more you do it, the less times you're wrong, and the more times you're right. But if you only do it every now and then, you're going to be wrong probably more times than you're right, which is the defeating part of it, which is why you're afraid to go do it. So you go back to going to what you know. No, you got to push through those failures, have some good honesty about why it occurred, take some accountability. Is it you? This happen? Was the setup need to be adjusted, or do you need to go back a step? Doing a reset or going back is not a problem, but a lot of people are also afraid to do that. Or they try to solve the problem in the middle of the training problem. That's not the place to do it sometimes. Sometimes you just got to end it, put the dog away, reconstruct, tear down what happened, and then go reset a new training problem up that maybe reduces a variable, that makes it a little bit easier so you guys can get over that hump, learn from it, and then test again. But what happens is, like we talked about, our ego gets involved. I don't want to look bad in front of my peers. I don't want my dog to suffer because I make bad decisions. So I'll just stay in this other lane where it's a little bit softer and easier for me to be in, versus let's just get through the tough stuff, power through it, learn those mistakes, and then get better.
Get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Get
that's
used
where
to
the
it.
growth lies. We
Yep.
don't grow being comfortable. We grow our bellies, being comfortable.
Yes, exactly. From sitting still. Yep. Doing nothing.
Sitting still. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about detection dogs?
There's a number of them. One, I think the biggest one, which I highlighted, is it's easier than we think it is in some cases. Like I said, it's a two-way street. Plenty will admit that it's got some complexities to it, but also there's many that admit, like, it's just odor. I'm just reinforcing when they find this odor. But man, there's so many complexities to the odor itself, to the environments, to what you're doing, the job you're in, all these different things. The other part is probably how imprinting is done. I think the layman has a lot of misunderstandings. Every cop will tell you, you will get a question usually within your first year or two of having a detection dog. Do you get the dogs addicted to drugs to find them? Do you feed the dogs? Do they eat the explosives? Like all these different things that you'll hear. Those are other misconceptions. But the biggest misconception, I think, is, like I said, oversimplifying detection that has significant complexities to it that you must pay attention to if you really want a solid detection dog.
Well, and especially when we have components in the environment like fentanyl, or things that are, if this dog touches or anything, that this can be.
Fentanyl has two variations. There's fentanyl citrate and there's fentanyl HCl. They're different. So they don't smell exactly the same. The chemical can be the same, but they won't. One's a liquid form and one's a powder form. They're different. And how the dog perceives that is different. So just because you've trained on fentanyl, the powder, all the time, does not mean you're going to hit the fentanyl liquid if it's been done that way. Same with meth. Those that train on meth, there's liquid meth too. So you have to expose the dog to the things that you expect it to find. You can't just hope that it will. Some cases, it's a lot of times it's a good cop intuition. The dog is not like fully responding, but they're smelling something pretty strong. And then there's the backup factors that this person's probably got an arrest history. Maybe the history is included of drugs. So then the handler's going, well, between that happening and my dog doing this, I'm calling it. They call it and they get lucky and they find, let's say, liquid meth. And their dog's never had liquid meth ever. Part of it was because of a little bit of the information they had on scene. Two, the dog's behavior was different enough that the handler felt comfortable calling it. But that same handler can tell you they've had 10 other calls they've done like that and nothing was there. So this is what we will grab a hold of that one that worked really well and say, this is why. And maybe it was a little bit of chance at the same time as it was maybe the dog was. So you don't know the answer. You hope that it's this. But what I'm getting at is we have to make sure the dog does get exposed to the more generalization of what the target could look like, the better you're going to have with a dog in its outcomes of being accurate, of telling you that this is there.
Well, just like these dogs have a God-given gift, I think that some of these cops, man, some of my buddies, dude, they just know, man. And I'm just like, dude, that's so cool. That
like they got the spidey sense, or we joke around that we call them a shit magnet. They have, they just have the thing.
I was armed, and my cop buddy knew, dude, exactly where my gun was and everything. And I was just like, dude, that's crazy. How did you know? I didn't, and I didn't touch it or anything. Yeah, he knew.
They've gone through it, and they were wrong a few times. And when they were wrong, they were like, "Well, why was I wrong? What was this?" That was a great analogy of the dog world too. The more you give those dogs those examples to learn from, there's going to be some wrong times for sure. But the more examples they get, they start being wrong a lot less and being right a lot more.
wild. It makes me, I mean, it makes me feel good too, because there's evil in this world, Cameron,
Yep.
you know that. And we need good cops. We need that insight. Let me see here. Reading dogs. Can you share a time when a dog saw you, taught you something? And this might be your buddy in Tennessee. Can you share a
Yeah,
time
yeah,
when
yeah.
your dog taught you something you didn't expect?
Yeah, there's various times where, again, the dog is trying to tell you something, but what you're looking at contradicts your belief. You're like, no, it can't be that can't be there because of whatever the thing is. And you walked away going, I'll give you something that happened to me for real. So this was in Las Vegas. We were training some dogs up to get ready for a casino that was going to. And at the same time, this casino had some construction going on. So we were relegated to an area near that construction zone because, of course, they don't let you train in the nice areas. They let you train in all the crap areas. So anyhow, we were training and we decided, well, these guys have a bunch of gear kind of lined up down the sidewalk. We'll utilize that as a training area because they had a bunch of like their toolboxes and tool things that was not from us. So it was really good for diversity of smells. So we put out one training aid in that environment, and we had one dog hit a toolbox area. And it's a big Joe box, they call it. So it had multiple different drawers to it, and we couldn't open up any of them. They were all locked. So we're like, that was weird, but dog found the target that we were looking for a few feet down from there. So part of us were thinking, oh, maybe the odor's drifting down, maybe this, maybe that. Another dog comes down and alerts the same spot. Now that happens a lot of times, even on falses. Once one dog falses in an area, and if you're doing training with multiple dogs, you're going to see usually another dog or two show interest, and or a handler will call it if the dog even doesn't sit or respond to it. So anyway, second dog comes in and we start going, well, is that dog just responding to what the first dog did? And that's why that occurred. Luckily enough that we got done training that day, that handler that worked there just decided to reach out to those guys. And these were firearms dogs. The guy reached out to those guys and said, hey, later, I was like a couple hours later, he found them and said, hey, what's in those toolboxes over there? We had two dogs alert to it. And he goes, oh, really? What kind of dogs you guys have? And we're like, firearms dogs. He starts laughing. Oh, that's where we have all these, basically they're shotgun shell primers for impact of putting like screws into the ground or whatever it was to go through cement. So it's these impact charges that have basically a very, very small load of black powder in it to set it off to go through. But in this case, it was boxes of it. It was large amounts so the dogs were right. We were coming up with all the different excuses of why we think it's happening, but the dog's nose was right. And there's been lots of handlers who've they didn't pay on something because they weren't sure. Then later to come to find out that they were right, or they thought their dog was lying to them only to find out the dog was right X amount of time later. So it's a tough one because we throw it out all the time in the dog world. We throw out the number one saying is trust your dog. We throw that out like it's the Bible verse, but man, is it hard for handlers to actually do that, which is why the next line that gets thrown out, the second most common, is trust your training. Well, that I think is a better description of what you should be doing. You should trust your training. If you can trust your training, trusting your dog becomes a lot easier. But trusting your dog happens through your failures and learning from them. And then you start trusting your dog when your dog is giving you information that you perceive to be correct versus you guessing what the dog is trying to tell you. Or maybe your dog just isn't confident enough yet because we haven't done enough generalization to the target substance to be different in enough ways that in this case, that difference was significant where the dog didn't do what it normally does because it smelled different enough.
I mean, what do you do in that case? You don't correct the dog.
No, you take the information back, you learn from it. And the first thing in this case was we went, okay, well, we were glad that our dogs did their job on the shotgun or the shell casing kind of thing. But at the same time, when I have stuff where I've either believed something that the dog was doing that I was wrong, and I have to take that, or if I let my bias show, like I was convinced something had to be there, I have to take ownership of I talked my dog into that behavior because I wouldn't leave the space, or I presented that thing 3 times when the first 2 times the dog was like there was nothing there, but of course in the third time the dog's like, yes it is, because you've been here 3 times.
Last question. My wife just came in. My dogs are all excited here.
Yeah, it's no problem.
If ever if every dog trainer listening today remembered just one lesson from Cameron Ford, what would you hope that lesson would be?
Be creative. Be creative, since my world's detection. Be creative in your detection. Think outside the box. Don't be afraid to try things, and let that dog lead you through the process and remove bias. So, but the biggest thing I think I want people to leave, if I were to be off this earth tomorrow, is that if they go out on their own trying to take some lessons I gave, is to be creative with their detection training, and to accept all tools are all tools are good, and all tools have downsides to them. Make your training look like your job that you do for real, and less like training, and less like the job looks like this. If you're creative, you can blend these worlds together. And the more creative you are, the more experiences you and your dog will have. And the last part of that part is embrace the failures. Take them as great opportunities to learn from.
That's right. Awesome, man. Well, thank you, Cameron. This has been exceptional, and I'm going to reach out to you too. Now that we're in touch, and ask you some more people, and let you know when I do have some of these people on.
Absolutely, glad to help.
I'll be referring back to your notes. But let's say goodbye to everybody. Bye, everybody, and I'll say goodbye to you in the studio. Okay.
Okay.